He still loves her. The words echoed in Isabella's mind the moment she accidentally overheard her in-laws' conversation. A conversation never meant for her. Domenico Falcone, the man who had sworn he loved her, had once been hopelessly in love with Donatella, his own brother's wife. Isabella wanted to believe it was only a shadow from the past, until the painful truth was confirmed. Domenico had been visiting his sister-in-law in secret, a marriage marked by doubt, a silence that cuts deeper than any words, and a wife torn between passion and the fear of losing the man she loves. And you? Would you fight for your marriage, even with the shadow of another woman lingering, or would you let doubt destroy it all? Sydney, Australia, 1989. 5 years earlier. Isabella waited for her mother's reaction, tense and uneasy. It couldn't possibly be good. Once again, she reminded herself, her mother had never approved of any of her decisions. Not that Isabella made a habit of being defiant. In truth, she had only gone against her mother a few times in her 21 years of life, and most of those were small, secret rebellions, like reading under the covers with a flashlight at night, or putting on lipstick right before turning the corner on the way to school. Her only truly bold decision had been to become an apprentice at a major hotel in Sydney instead of studying law at the university. Then, a year earlier, moving into a tiny apartment in Bondi to live on her own. But none of those choices came close to the importance of this one. Planning a wedding at the registry office, a ceremony that would take place the very next morning. And up until now, she hadn't said a single word to her mother about it. The silence between them felt endless. Rosa Bellini sat at the garden table, smoking, saying absolutely nothing. That silence was torture. Her mother was usually sharp and quick with words. Rosa was intelligent. With a razor-sharp tongue, she used to deliver arguments that were always perfectly logical, at least in her own mind, especially when it came to women's rights. As a lawyer specializing in discrimination cases, Rosa was an expert in feminist causes. At 52, twice divorced, she had become an uncompromising mother and a woman who despised male dominance with all her being. And yet, Isabella still loved her, though at times she didn't understand why. No man had ever been good enough for Rosa, not even Isabella's father. And none of Isabella's boyfriends had ever stood a chance either, which is exactly why Isabella had avoided introducing Nico to her mother for as long as she could. She didn't want Rosa to ruin the one love she knew was real. But now, things had gone too far. The wedding was tomorrow. The truth couldn't be hidden any longer. When Rosa finally put out her cigarette and lifted her piercing blue eyes, Isabella's stomach tightened. "This wedding wasn't your idea, Isabella." "Or his?" her mother asked coldly. "Actually, it was his," Isabella answered with pride. She remembered the night Nico had proposed under the moonlight, right after finding out about the baby. That was the moment she knew he truly loved her. He wasn't just after a fling. Her mother had always said action spoke louder than words. To Isabella, marriage meant love and commitment. It wasn't just physical desire. But Rosa's face remained stern. "I suppose you never even considered an abortion, did you?" At that moment, Isabella almost hated her. "Not for a single instant," she said indignantly. "I love Nico, Mother, with all my heart." "I don't doubt that," Rosa replied with a cynical look. "Why else would an intelligent girl sleep with a man without protection? What I don't understand is why he didn't think of it either." Isabella flushed. She would never admit how instantly drawn to Nico she had been. How she couldn't bring herself to stop him that first night. How one night had turned into many more. And how, only a week later, her late period confirmed what she hadn't dared to imagine. She was pregnant. But Nico hadn't been angry. He had held her, comforted her, and whispered in her ear, "Don't worry, mia Michetta," his little kitten. That was what he always called her. "We'll marry as soon as possible. It won't be a big ceremony, and for now there won't be time for a honeymoon. But we'll be together, and that's what matters." Even now, remembering those words warmed her heart. But facing her mother was different. Rosa's silence was not out of shock. It was judgment. "So, what does your future husband do for a living?" Rosa asked abruptly. He's a businessman. His family's company trades Italian products worldwide. Nico is about to open an office and a warehouse here in Sydney. Rosa raised an eyebrow. And where exactly did you meet this Nico? He doesn't sound like your usual type. He was living at the Majestic Hotel while looking for a house, Isabella explained. At the mention of the Majestic, one of Sydney's most luxurious hotels, Rosa's eyes narrowed. What's his full name? Domenico Falcone, Isabella said proudly. She knew the weight of that name in Italy. He's Italian? Rosa's voice was horrified. Isabella blinked. She hadn't expected that reaction. Yes, from Milan, but he speaks perfect English. He studied at Harvard, worked in New York, London, and Paris. He barely has an accent, just enough to be charming. Rosa leaned back, exhaling smoke. The accent isn't the problem. The problem is he's Italian. And I know very well how Italian men treat their wives, like second-class citizens. Nico is not like that. Isabella snapped. And you're wrong about Italian men. That's ignorant and offensive. Her mind flashed back to afternoons at her best friend Antonia's house, where her Italian father had been kind, warm, and loving, a true family man, so unlike her own mother. But Rosa's voice cut like a knife. All men are the same. Give them power, and they'll abuse it. Italian men just do it with more pride. Isabella clenched her fists. You're wrong. Nico won't make me suffer. I'll give him everything he needs. I'll stand by him no matter what. Then you'll end up being his roommate, Rosa muttered. No, I'll be his wife. Isabella fired back. Rosa's cold eyes narrowed again. We'll see. Honeymoons always end, Isabella. Just wait. Nico and I will never divorce. Never. You say that now, Rosa replied, lighting another cigarette. But let's see what you say 5 years from now. For a moment, silence again. Heavy, suffocating. Then Isabella lifted her chin. Would you at least come to my wedding? Rosa took a slow drag, then finally said, Yes, I'll be there. And I'll be here when it all falls apart, too. Isabella bit back her tears. She wouldn't let her mother see her break. A few minutes later, when she finally brought Nico into the garden, holding him tightly by the arm, Rosa Bellini looked at him for the first time. And for the first time in Italy, 5 years later. Isabella stretched out on the bed and tried to sleep, as everyone else in the house was doing that humid summer afternoon. But it was impossible. She had never gotten used to that Mediterranean habit. Besides, she was far too restless for a siesta. Her eyes slowly scanned the bedroom, lingering for a few seconds on a luxurious crystal chandelier hanging from the ceiling. It was the main guest room in the Falcone family villa on Lake Como, where she and Nico always stayed during their annual visits. Only the best for my son and his lovely wife. Nico's mother had said the first time they arrived, for years earlier, with Isabella carrying their newborn in her arms. A sigh escaped Isabella's lips as she remembered those first years of marriage. They had been wonderful, almost like living the honeymoon they never really had. Their intimacy had always been good, fantastic, in the beginning, and even now it was still strong. Nico would probably say it was more than good. But then, he didn't spend every single day at home taking care of 2 children under 5. There were many nights when Isabella simply wasn't in the mood, but she almost never turned him away unless she was truly sick. Sometimes, she even had to show enthusiasm when she was exhausted. Yet she did it. For him. She frowned slightly, realizing she had been doing that more often lately. But here in Italy, it was different. Without the constant demands of the children, she usually felt more willing. And Nico, he became almost insatiable, seeking her not only at night, but sometimes in the middle of the day. For years earlier, when Nico had first suggested they take an afternoon siesta while Matteo was napping, Isabella could hardly believe her ears. After all, the man was already a powerhouse most of the time. But he had insisted, and Isabella finally agreed, only to be surprised when he took her into the bedroom for an afternoon of closeness and passion. At first, she had been shocked. Nico hadn't been that attentive since before the wedding. During her pregnancy, he had been gentle and considerate, accepting without complaint her lack of desire in the 6 months after the baby was born. But that afternoon, he gave himself to her with unusual intensity. And though Isabella had found it shocking to make love in broad daylight, especially with his family right there in the villa, it had been thrilling. The next day, she hadn't needed any convincing, nor the day after that. Lucille was born 8.5 months after they returned to Sydney. But this trip was entirely different. It wasn't their usual summer holiday that had brought them to Lake Como a little earlier than usual. It was a funeral. Nico's only brother, Enrico, had died in a car accident, losing control of his Ferrari on one of the winding roads by the lake and crashing fatally against a rock wall. Fortunately, Donatella, Enrico's wife, had not been in the car, though she didn't consider herself fortunate at all. The poor woman had been inconsolable during the funeral. Nico's parents had taken her in at the villa, since her own parents had long passed away, and everyone in the house was doing their best to comfort her. Still, it was hard to know what to say. Isabella thought it a pity that their marriage hadn't produced children. They might have given Donatella reason to keep going. She had tried once to speak with her, but Donatella had only burst into tears and locked herself in her room for the rest of the day. Isabella had felt awful, seeking out Nico's mother afterward. Alba had only squeezed her hand, smiled sadly, and told her not to blame herself. Donatella was simply Donatella, and Isabella knew exactly what that meant. To her, Donatella was the kind of woman who was fragile. Beautiful, yes, but without substance, without real strength. In the past 4 years, Isabella had barely spent time in her company, just a few family dinners, sometimes here at the villa, sometimes at Enrico's apartment in Milan. At those occasions, Donatella would sit quietly by her husband's side, casting glances at him as if unsure what to say or do. Isabella never knew if she adored him or feared him. Enrico, 2 years older than Nico, was undeniably handsome and charming. But Isabella had never been able to stand him. He made her uneasy. Once at a party in his apartment, she had gone to the bathroom and, as she was washing her hands, he appeared out of nowhere and made a crude proposition. She had been so shocked she could do nothing but run out and rush down the stairs. She had never told Nico. She never would. Isabella wasn't naive. She sensed there was something strained between the two brothers. In public they were civil, but that was all. And she also sensed Nico had little fondness for Enrico's wife, a suspicion confirmed by his cool indifference when Donatella returned to Milan a week earlier. She had claimed she needed time to herself. Everyone had objected, saying it was too risky. Everyone except Nico. Truthfully, Isabella hadn't minded her absence. Donatella's presence unsettled the household, bringing a kind of tension, as if she didn't quite belong. Nico, more than anyone, was spared, since he spent most of his time away. He had been commuting to Milan throughout the week, taking over the work Enrico had left behind and deciding who would assume his role now that he was gone. Isabella worried Antonio, Nico's father, might ask him to take on the position permanently, especially since he had retired a year before due to heart problems. But thankfully, that hadn't happened. Still, she was beginning to resent how much time Nico was spending away from her and the children. The previous week had been even worse, with her husband arriving home later each night. After a quick dinner and a shower, he would collapse into bed, too exhausted for the tenderness that had once been so natural for him. If there was one thing Isabella could say about her husband, it was the constancy of his desire for intimacy. And yet, Nico hadn't touched her since the funeral, almost 3 weeks ago. She was starting to miss the closeness they shared when they made love. Every woman longed to feel desire that way. With a sigh, she swung her feet off the bed and stood up, pushing her hair back into place. She picked up the novel from the nightstand and crossed the expensive Persian rug toward the glass doors that opened to the balcony. Outside in the warm air, she sat on one of the lounge chairs and opened the book to the page she had left marked. After several minutes staring at the print without taking in a single word, Isabella closed it again and simply sat there, trying to relax and take in the breathtaking view. The first time she had seen Lake Como, she had been struck by the beauty of the mountains rising beyond the crystal-clear waters. The grand villas along the shores and the endless luxury yachts completed the scene of a place almost too beautiful to describe. The Falcone Villa wasn't the largest by the lake, but its size still surpassed most of the others, proof that the family had been wealthy for centuries. Built in the 18th century, it had been renovated many times. With 3 floors, more bedrooms than Isabella could count, grand formal rooms, and terraces at nearly every French door. There was also an imposing swimming pool, with a path leading down to private dock, where a speedboat, a yacht, and a few motorboats were moored. Inside, monumental paintings covered the walls, some of them clearly priceless antiques. In recent years, Isabella had worried their son might damage something, but strangely enough, the boy never had, almost as if he understood these treasures would one day be his to inherit and should be protected. Half Australian though he was, Matteo was every bit an Italian child, openly affectionate, loud, stubborn. He had inherited his father's hair, eyes, and striking looks. Lucia also had dark eyes and hair and was very pretty, but much calmer, far gentler. She was content to follow her mother or play with her dolls. Her brother, on the other hand, had to be in constant motion, always doing something. Since the age of 2, he had refused to take no for an answer. Like father, like son, Isabella thought with a smile. That thought pulled her mind back to Nico, her beloved Nico, whom she still adored, despite the fact he was an easy man to live with. He always wanted things done his way. Many times, Isabella had been tempted to argue, to insist on her way instead, but she rarely did. Except once when Lucia was born. Isabella had wanted to name their daughter Chloe. She had even wanted to call Matteo Alexander once, but gave in when Nico explained that the heir to the Falcone fortune had to bear an Italian name. She hadn't minded too much. Matteo wasn't so different from Alexander. When she finally had a daughter, she thought she would be free to choose the name she wanted. But Nico had been unyielding, insisting on Lucia. He grew angrier than she had ever seen him when she pushed back. "I am the head of this family," he declared, dogmatic. "It will be as I decide." For a moment, Isabella had felt a surge of resentment. "You are exactly what my mother warned me about," she had wanted to say, but the thought of her mother was exactly what helped her keep control. She refused to end up like Rosa, bitter and alone. After all, it was only a name. And what was a name? Not something worth a divorce. So once again, she had swallowed her pride and yielded. Still, it hurt to know that Nico hadn't cared about her opinion on something that mattered so much. Her mother had once warned her she risked becoming nothing more than a roommate, and maybe that was true in a sense, Isabella admitted. But most of the time, her marriage still made her happy. The sudden ringing of a phone downstairs pulled her out of her thoughts. Determined to distract herself, Isabella reopened the novel and tried to get absorbed in the story, until a voice drifted up from the terrace below. It was Nico's mother, speaking in Italian. Isabella understood every word. She had always been good with languages, Latin and Japanese at school, and after marrying Nico, she had studied Italian through tapes and endless practice with him and his family. "You're out here too, Antonio," Alba said. "I see you couldn't sleep either." That was Domenico on the phone. Instantly, Isabella held her breath. "Something wrong?" Antonio asked. "He'll be late again. He doesn't want us to wait dinner for him." Isabella almost sighed. Of all nights, she had so wanted him to come home early. "So what?" Antonio said casually. "Why do you look so worried? If he has so much work, Antonio, why hasn't he asked for your help? It wouldn't cost you anything to spend a few hours at the office until the firm's problems are settled." "I offered, woman, but he refused. Said one death in the family was enough for this year. But you're right. He did look tired last night. I'll insist tomorrow." "Tomorrow might be too late, Antonio." "Too late for what?" "I don't think he's at the office tonight," Alba said tensely. Isabella sat forward in her chair. "I think he's with Donatella." Her heart pounded. "What?" Antonio shouted. "Don't be ridiculous, woman. Domenico is not that kind of man. He would never betray his beautiful wife. Never." Isabella was grateful to be seated, or she might have lost her balance. "Normally, no, Antonio," Alba pressed, "but these are not normal times. Domenico loved Donatella long, before Isabella came into his life. He never forgave Enrico for stealing her. Domenico can pretend all he wants, but I know my son. I'm his mother. For heaven's sake, that was years ago. Perhaps, but Domenico is persistent. I've always known that when he gave his heart, it would be forever. Domenico loves his wife. Antonio insisted. Has he ever actually said that to you? A chill swept over Isabella. She leaned forward, desperately hoping to hear Antonio say firmly, "Yes, of course. Many times. Men don't talk about such things, woman. But it's as obvious to me as the sun rising tomorrow." Alba sighed. I don't doubt that he loves Isabella in some way. She's lovely, sweet. But he is in love with Donatella. I will never forget the way he looked at her that night at their engagement party. It was a hungry look. Finding her in bed with his brother that same night nearly destroyed him. On the upper balcony, Isabella sat frozen, stunned by each blow. Nico, in love with Donatella. Her husband once engaged to his brother's wife. Donatella had chosen Enrico over him. Unfortunately, Alba went on with another sigh. Domenico treated Donatella the wrong way. He played the gentleman, thinking respecting her innocence was the right thing to do. But Enrico, sadly, had no respect for anything or anyone. He simply took what he wanted, and foolish, naive Donatella fell right into his trap. "You exaggerate, woman," Antonio snapped. Enrico wasn't that devious, just weak when it came to fleshly desires. If he were truly vile, he wouldn't have married the girl at all. Yes, they were both wrong, but they couldn't help it. They fell madly in love at first sight. Enrico himself told me so. He regretted hurting his brother. But Donatella obviously never loved Domenico. Enrico said she only agreed to marry him because he was kind, and she was lonely after her father's death. Once Domenico realized that, he stopped caring for her. I assure you, if he didn't care for her anymore, Alba countered sharply, then why did he run off to Australia? And why didn't he come back for his brother's wedding? He didn't run off to Australia. I sent him there. And as for not attending the wedding, be fair, woman. His pride was wounded. He had every right to stay away. Perhaps, but I don't think he wants to stay away now. With Enrico gone, Domenico finally has a chance to claim what he always wanted. Donatella in his bed. I cannot believe a son of mine would dishonor the family like that. Why not? Alba shot back. Your other son did it many times. Enrico may have strayed, but he was handsome, and women threw themselves at him without shame. A pity Donatella never had children. Children keep a man home. They make him faithful. But enough of Enrico. He's gone, and we shouldn't speak ill of the dead. I don't want to hear another word on the matter. Closing your eyes won't change reality, my dear husband, Alba muttered, worried. If what you say is true, then closing my eyes is the only solution, Antonio replied firmly. If Nico is foolish enough to have an affair with Donatella, he will soon realize there's nothing better than his home. Besides, in 2 days Domenico and his family will be flying back to Sydney. Be patient. Say nothing. Any problem will fade on its own. Perhaps you're right. But 2 days could be a very, very long time. Isabella slipped back into the bedroom quietly, careful not to draw the attention of the couple on the terrace below. Then she collapsed onto the bed. On impulse, she pressed her hands against her eyes, as if blocking out the light could erase the horror of what she had just overheard. Nico in love with Donatella. Nico once engaged to his brother's widow. He probably wasn't at the office at all. He was spending those days with a woman he had once loved and lost. It seemed impossible, and yet it explained so much. The fact that Nico had never once told her he loved her. Never. He used other words, other phrases. Adoration, desire, but never love. And there was his strange behavior with Donatella. Not indifference, as Isabella had thought, but the other side of love. Oh, God! The pain was not only emotional. It was brutally physical. Her chest felt crushed, and she could hardly breathe. Gasping for air, Isabella rushed into the bathroom, splashed cold water on her face, and drew in great gulps of oxygen. Her reflection in the mirror was almost unrecognizable. Her skin was pale, her eyes red, her chin trembling. When tears blurred her vision, she shut her eyes, shoulders collapsing, and sat down on the edge of the bidet before she fell to the floor. Dear God, what was she going to do? Suddenly, perversely, her thoughts turned to her mother. But Rosa was the last person she could ever confide in. Rosa would simply say, "I told you so," with that air of superiority. And Isabella couldn't help but remember. 5 years ago, her mother had predicted that Nico would break her heart. Next week would mark their 5th wedding anniversary. And Rosa had been right all along. Or had she? What if Antonio was right and Alba was wrong? What if Nico was no longer in love with Donatella? If he no longer cared for the woman who had left him for his brother? Isabella's heart clung desperately to that fragile possibility. It was possible, wasn't it? True, Nico had never spoken the words "I love you," but in the past 5 years, he had never shown a single sign of unhappiness. He had never looked at another woman. He always seemed content when he came home, content with her night after night, and he had certainly seemed satisfied with their life together in every way. Until 3 weeks ago, Isabella's stomach knotted. Nico's odd behavior had begun right after he returned to his parents' villa for Enrico's funeral. She had thought his lack of desire was grief for his brother or exhaustion, but now another reason haunted her. Isabella whispered, trembling. Donatella's abrupt move back to Milan suddenly seemed far more sinister, and Nico's eager approval of her decision? Obvious now. He had wanted a chance to be alone with the woman he still loved, away from the family and away from Isabella. Donatella's tears that day hadn't been grief. They had been guilt. Yes, guilt. She was that kind of woman, Isabella thought bitterly. A woman who could feel guilty, but not strong enough to say no. And right now, Donatella was probably in Nico's arms. Isabella's eyes widened, not with fear, but with fury. Antonio might look the other way at his son's adultery, but she would not. She would confront Nico. Tonight, she would borrow Alba's car, drive straight to Donatella's apartment in Milan, and face the truth. She knew the way. Nico had often driven her to Milan for shopping trips, and dinners at Enrico's apartment were not uncommon. She herself had driven back on more than one occasion, memorizing the route. Nico liked his wine at dinner, and afterward he always handed her the keys. Rarely did he allow her to drive when he was in the car, something that annoyed her, but she tolerated, just as she had tolerated what he told her right after their wedding, when he said he didn't like seeing her drink too much. "In my opinion, it makes you aggressive." Then, before she could protest, he had added, "just like your mother." The comparison had silenced her instantly. From then on, Isabella had limited herself to 1 or 2 glasses of wine. But oh, how many times in the past 5 years she had wanted to throw it back at him. "Your turn not to drink. Tonight, I want to relax." She stared at her own reflection, furious. Stupid, submissive woman. She spat at herself. No wonder he thinks he can fool me with a handful of words. Well, Nico was about to get the shock of his life. In about an hour, she would be knocking on Donatella's door. And then she would unleash hell. And if, by some remote chance, Antonio was right and Nico was not with his sister-in-law, she would simply turn around and drive back. But deep inside, Isabella knew. Women always knew when they opened their eyes. "Well, my eyes are wide open now, Nico," she declared out loud. "God help you." Her heart pounding with rage, Isabella fixed her hair, applied lipstick, and went downstairs in search of her mother-in-law. She found Alba in one of the grand sitting rooms, quietly reading a magazine. Normally so composed, Alba's shoulders were stooped, her posture defeated. Clear evidence of grief. Isabella's heart ached. She truly liked her mother-in-law. Alba had always been warm and generous, welcoming Isabella into her home and her heart without hesitation. Now the woman must be shattered, one son dead, the other entangled in a disastrous affair. Protecting Alba from unnecessary pain became Isabella's priority. She would still confront Nico, but whatever happened afterward, Alba would never know. Decision made, Isabella stepped into the room. At the sound of her footsteps on the polished floor, Alba looked up instantly. "Isabella," she exclaimed. I thought you were resting." Isabella forced her most casual expression. I tried, but I've got a terrible headache. Oh, my dear, I'm so sorry. Can I get you something? A pill? Some tea? No, I don't think that would help. It's hormonal. My cycle starts tomorrow. That much was true. Birth control made things predictable. It happens every month. Sometimes when I'm at home, I go for a walk or take a drive. For some reason, it helps. The headache eases. She took a breath. Could I borrow your car, Alba? I promise I'll be careful. I won't drive fast. Of course, dear. But where are you going? Oh, just out for a drive. Would you like me to come with you? No. I'd rather be alone. Would you mind watching the children, in case they wake before I return? Of course, darling. 5 minutes later, Isabella was carefully steering through the tight curves of the road that circled the lake. Only the thought of leaving her children orphaned kept her from speeding. She was desperate to reach Milan. She needed to see the evidence of Nico's betrayal with her own eyes. She wanted to see his car parked in front of Donatella's building. She wanted to walk in and catch them together. The trip took a little over an hour, and traffic grew worse as she approached the city. Isabella got a bit lost before finally finding the wide street where the apartment building stood. She thought she was prepared to see Nico's car parked in the visitor spaces outside, but she was wrong. Her stomach lurched the moment her eyes recognized the vehicle, and the nausea worsened when the license plate confirmed there was no mistake. She barely had time to open the car door before her lunch came up violently onto the sidewalk instead of her lap. Even so, her dress was stained. Finally, she sank back into the leather seat, trembling. The only thought in her mind was that the man she loved, her husband, her Nico, was inside that building in Donatella's apartment, probably with her in secret. There was no point pretending otherwise. If his presence they were innocent, why would Nico have lied? He had probably been lying all week, Isabella concluded bitterly, feeling another wave of nausea. Likely he hadn't even been to the office, except maybe briefly. That was why he had given her only his cell number, not the office line. But now that she had proof of his lies, her courage failed her cruelly. Suddenly, she was terrified of what might happen if she went in and confronted them face to face. There would be no turning back. No pretending it was just a passing problem, a fleeting temptation. No looking the other way, as Antonio had suggested. If she confronted them, her marriage would be over. Even if Nico didn't want that, and Isabella still believed he would never want to hurt her or lose the children, it would become a matter of pride, her wounded pride. It was one thing to live with a man you suspected didn't love you, quite another to live with a man who you knew he didn't love you. An impossible situation. But she could still leave now. Drive back to the villa. Pretend she hadn't seen anything. And if Nico returned to Australia with the family on Friday, then maybe they could start over, as if nothing had happened. That would prove he had chosen his family over Donatella. Who knew? Perhaps being with Donatella was nothing more than a momentary impulse. An echo of the past he needed to face. Maybe he was doing exactly what his father had said, closing that chapter once and for all. As painful as it was to imagine Nico in another woman's arms, it still seemed better than an irreversible divorce. The truth was, Isabella simply could not bear the thought of leaving him. She knew she would never love another man the way she loved Nico. And above all, he was the father of her children. They adored him. Even Rosa, after some time, had grown fond of her son-in-law. Better to swallow her pride. Better to hide the pain, bury the humiliation, and pretend nothing had changed, though it would be far from easy. Swallowing hard, Isabella leaned forward, started the engine, and slowly pulled away from the curb, turning the car back toward Lake Como. "My dear, you look awful," Alba exclaimed as soon as she saw her come in. "And what happened to your dress?" I felt sick," Isabella murmured, exhausted. "It must be a migraine, not hormones." "Oh, poor thing. I know how terrible that is. I suffer from migraines for years. You should go back to bed and keep the curtains closed. I'll get you some excellent pills my doctor prescribed. They'll make you sleep, but that's for the best. And don't worry about the children." Antonio took them on a boat ride. Carla went along, so they're perfectly safe. Isabella struggled to hold back her tears. "You're very kind," she whispered. "Not at all." Domenico called again. "I didn't tell him you'd gone out. I said you had a headache and were back in bed. I hope I did the right thing." Seeing concern in Alba's eyes, Isabella wondered why the two of them were both protecting Nico. Probably for the children. "Yes, Alba, you did the right thing," she replied flatly. "Good. Now go upstairs, take a cool shower. I'll leave the pills by the bed, along with juice and a light snack. You shouldn't take medication on an empty stomach. Don't worry about anything. And if you're still sleeping when Nico gets home, I'll tell him not to disturb you." This time Isabella couldn't stop the tears. Alba looked alarmed. "Are you sure it's just a migraine, Isabella? There's nothing else wrong." She refused to add to her mother-in-law's worries. This was her burden to carry alone. I think I'm just homesick," she admitted softly. Alba nodded. "Then it's time for Nico to take you back." Isabella only smiled sadly and turned to climb the stairs. Her body felt unbearably heavy, each step an effort. When she finally stepped out of the shower, she saw on the nightstand the tray Alba had promised, the pills, juice, and a small meal. Her mother-in-law's thoughtfulness sent a fresh wave of tears to her eyes. Alba would be devastated if this marriage collapsed. Antonio, too. Isabella couldn't allow the Falcones, her children, or herself to suffer that way. She loved Nico. She would always love him, no matter what happened. She simply couldn't imagine life without him. By the time she drifted off to sleep, her cheeks were still damp with tears. But when she woke many hours later, her face was dry. She opened her eyes to the sounds of someone moving in the bathroom. Her wayward husband had finally decided to come home. Strangely, Isabella's first reaction was fury, not sorrow. What angered her most was noticing the room was dark. Nico must have turned off the lamp when he came in. She rolled over to check the glowing numbers on the digital clock. 11:20. Not that late. Just early enough not to raise suspicion in a wife. With bitter resentment pressing on her chest, Isabella turned back to face the wall, curling into a tight fetal position, thankful she had chosen one of her more modest nightgowns. Nico loved when she wore black silk lingerie that barely covered her body. Tonight, the gown she wore fell past her knees, and that was just fine with her. She swore to herself she would pretend to be asleep. That way, she wouldn't say anything she might regret in the morning. Perhaps she might have kept that promise, if Nico hadn't stayed so long in the shower. But 15 minutes later, with the water still running, Isabella's mind spiraled into darker, more jealous thoughts. He was scrubbing Donatella's scent off his skin. He must still reek of the musky perfume she always wore. When the water finally stopped, 5 minutes later, Isabella had already turned back toward the bathroom door, eyes fixed, waiting for him to appear. And then he did, moving quietly, switching off the bathroom light, before easing the door shut behind him. But not before Isabella caught sight of him. That tall, muscular frame outlined in the doorway. There was no denying it. Nico was an impressive man when he was naked. She had known it from the first time she saw him, and she still felt it now, even when she wanted to hate him. Her heart pounded harder as his silhouette crossed the dim room, reaching the bed in seconds. Of course, Nico often slept without clothes, but that cool, casual arrogance of his only fueled her rage. When he slid in beside her, molding his body against hers, Isabella wanted to strike him. She lay there, silently imagining the cruelest punishments for the crimes he had committed against her and their marriage. The guillotine? Too quick. A firing squad? Too merciful. No, she wanted Nico to suffer as she was suffering, to groan, to writhe in agony. Yet those violent fantasies gave her no real satisfaction. And so, her blind fury was soon replaced by an equally fierce determination. She had to know the truth. She had to know just how far his betrayal had gone. His body's exhaustion might tell her more than any parked car ever could. He grunted faintly when her hand slid along his back, curving around his hip, threatening to go lower. Abruptly, Nico rolled onto his side, propped on one elbow, staring straight at her. Her hand still lingered, hesitant. Across him, Isabella's heart raced. Was she afraid of the truth she might uncover? Or afraid of what he might do once touched this way? "I thought you were asleep," he said, his voice as cold as his skin. "I was," Isabella answered, fighting to keep her face composed in the moonlit shadows. His dark eyes studied her, strangely curious, uncertain. "I tried not to make any noise," he added defensively. "Why?" "Because Mama said you had a terrible migraine. She said she had to give you pills." "She did. Your mother is a very kind woman." "That's true." A strained silence followed. Nico said nothing more. Isabella felt her courage slipping away. Her hand still rested on his stomach, and her pulse hammered in her throat. "You've been coming home very late, Nico?" "Yes, I know. I'm sorry." Enrico left a complete mess at the office. "I'm trying to get everything sorted before we leave on Friday, but it's not done yet. Today was far less productive than I hoped. Too many interruptions, which means I'll be working late again tomorrow." "I see," Isabella whispered. The heavy silence returned. "You don't usually get migraines, Isabella," Nico murmured at last. "What could cause this one?" "Thinking of you, still in love with Donatella all these years. Thinking of you in her bed all day." Those thoughts reignited her bitter resolve. She needed the truth laid bare once and for all. "I feel much better now," she murmured, pulling her hand away. "I can tell," Nico replied. When he made no move to stop her, Isabella shifted again. Hesitantly, her hand slid downward, reaching his waist, searching for an answer. The shock froze her fingers. Nico had never felt so unresponsive, so utterly indifferent to her touch. Even after all she had discovered that afternoon, the reality still stung like a fresh wound. Waves of devastation crashed through her, anguish, despair, disbelief. How could he do this to her? Betray her? Destroy her? And Donatella. How could that shameless woman allow it? Only days after her husband's death? But soon, Isabella's fury twisted into something else. A wild, desperate determination. If Nico wouldn't respond to her, she would make him. She would remind him that she was his wife, the woman who knew his body better than anyone else, the only one who could give him true pleasure. Donatella could never compare. Slowly, her fingers began to move again. His low whisper sounded almost like a protest, but Isabella ignored it stubbornly, using every bit of her knowledge to reclaim his attention. Yet this time, his body refused to respond. He must have spent the whole day with Donatella. No wonder he was drained. Still, Isabella refused to give up. He had to react. "This isn't like you, Nico," she whispered, still touching him. "I thought you were asleep," he muttered through clenched teeth. "That's why I took such a long, cold shower." And indeed, his skin was cold. But Isabella didn't believe for a moment that water alone explained his lack of desire. "Then maybe you need a little extra help," she whispered. Sliding down toward the foot of the bed, Isabella tried something bold and unexpected to capture her husband's attention. It wasn't something she did often. In fact, she couldn't even remember the last time she had been this daring. Probably last summer in this very room. But in the past, it had always worked. No matter how many times they had made love before, it always drove him wild. Even now, her lips excited him. She felt Nico's skin shiver beneath her touch. Isabella was merciless. Her only goal was to push him so far he would lose control completely. She wanted to seduce him, to make him forget everything else, especially Donatella. Deep down, she knew she was acting out of desperation. Part of her recoiled at what she was doing. Yet another part stayed coldly determined, pushing her to use every trick she knew, and even more. Her hands joined her lips in their torment, searching out every spot that could awaken Nico's fiercest desires. When she finally heard him groan, she felt his strong fingers sink into her hair. For a second, Isabella thought he might stop her, but he didn't. With a low, trembling voice, he only murmured something in Italian, forcing her to lift her head briefly to meet his eyes. "Do you want me to stop?" she purred. He shook his head violently, his refusal clear. Isabella smiled wickedly and bent back down. His breathing turned ragged. He was so aroused, more than she had ever felt before. A wave of triumph surged through her, thrilling her, satisfying her. At that moment, Nico was entirely hers. He had no control, no ability to think, no strength to resist. Or so she believed. drunk on the illusion of her own power. Isabella didn't notice his hands slip from her hair until they gripped her shoulders hard, pulling her up. Her gasp of shock and frustration was real. Ignoring it, Nico tugged her satin gown up to her waist, gripping her firmly by the hips and lifting her over him. Before Isabella could even react, she felt the fierce intensity of her husband consuming her without hesitation. Her lips parted as pleasure swept through her in dizzying waves. She hadn't realized until that very moment how much she had wanted him. "Be still," Nico commanded, his fingers digging into her skin. "But I don't want to be still," she whispered back. "I can see that," he murmured with a wicked smile. "But give me a moment before we continue. Even so, maybe I can help you while we wait." In the moonlight, his dark eyes gleamed as he slowly peeled the satin gown from her body, revealing her delicate form. She didn't need to look to know her body was already betraying her, responding intensely to his touch. "I should probably neglect you more often, if this is the result," Nico rasped, his voice thick with desire. His hands moved over her with feverish intensity, exploring every reaction. "Do you want me to stop?" he asked softly, echoing her own word from moments before. The surge of longing left her speechless. Nico chuckled darkly, clearly pleased, and continued the delicious torment. Soon, Isabella couldn't even bring herself to look at him. She was utterly lost, overwhelmed, helpless in his arms. "Nico, please," she whispered. "Please, what?" His voice was low, teasing, satisfied with her surrender. "Do you want it to stop? Or do you want more? Tell me. I'll do anything you ask. Although tonight, you don't look like a kitten at all. You look like a tigress. I think you'd dominate me completely if I let you." "Nico, please," she repeated hoarsely, her face burning with equal parts shame and desire. "Is this what you want? For me to take you like this?" Her body tensed. "No, no." Her mind cried desperately. "Not like this." Sometimes Nico's intensity had pushed her beyond her limits, but never had she felt so vulnerable, so undone. Her stomach knotted uncontrollably, but he didn't stop. His touch was relentless, precise. Moments later, Isabella was completely bewitched, her body betraying her as she writhed in a mix of agony and pleasure. "Oh, God," she whispered, moving restlessly as if to stretch the moment as long as possible. "Don't hold back." Nico murmured in her ear, "I want to see you give in. You know how much that drives me wild, don't you?" His words barely registered. "Look at me, Isabella," he demanded, eyes locked on her as her body moved in that fevered, sensual rhythm. A guttural sound escaped him, almost animal, before he flipped her beneath him, taking her with a force that bordered on madness. The intensity was overwhelming, and he lost control within seconds, just as Isabella was swept away by wave after wave of uncontrollable passion. Moments later, their trembling bodies lay side by side. She clung to him, thinking only of that instant, pushing away everything else. But as the heat faded, Isabella's sanity crept back in. In the end, who seduced who, darling? A cold, mocking voice whispered in her mind. Who really lost control? And what were you trying to prove? Nothing, Isabella answered silently. Nothing, except that she was still giving Nico her body. The one thing he had always wanted from her, besides children. A body that, no matter how beautiful, was nothing but a traitor. Clinging to a last shred of pride, she tried to pull free from his embrace. But she was too exhausted, and he was far too strong. Defeated, she let her head fall against his chest and began to sob uncontrollably. "Hey, what is it?" Nico adjusted, lifting her face gently between his hands. She couldn't speak. She only stared at him, her eyes raw with anguish. "How could you do this to me?" She wanted to scream. "I gave you everything. And still, I give you everything." "Easy, easy," he murmured, stroking her hair softly. "You just got carried away, that's all. Sometimes, when people go too long without intimacy, they react like this." With tender care, he lowered her head onto the pillow, brushing her cheek with a gentle kiss. "It's all right now," he went on, still caressing her. "Stop crying and try to sleep, or you'll give yourself another headache. I know I haven't been the best husband lately, but these last 3 weeks have been difficult, to say the least. My brother's death caused so many problems. Complicated problems. but let's just say most of it has finally been settled. Isabella heard his sudden confession without reaction. He thinks he's so clever. Bastard. She shut her eyes, refusing to meet his gaze. She knew she'd find nothing there. Nico was as skilled a liar as he was a businessman. Maybe I don't say it as often as I should, he continued, pressing a kiss into her hair. But I love you, Isabella. Her breath caught. Why did those long-awaited words stab her heart like a poison blade? Who was he trying to convince, her or himself? Oh, Nico! Nico! Her soul wept, but her heart hardened. She knew who he truly loved. His own mother had revealed it. Donatella, the woman he had once planned to marry. Everything was unfolding just as Antonio had said. Nico wasn't willing to risk losing his family, not even for Donatella. Isabella knew she had to look happy, hiding any sign that she already knew the truth. She was determined to make every effort to save her marriage. Hadn't she already proved that? But she also wanted to protect her self-respect, so she refused to listen to those words, keeping her eyes shut and pretending to be fast asleep. Isabella. Nico called softly after a few seconds. When she didn't move, he finally sighed and carefully shifted to the other side of the bed. A deep resentment spread through Isabella. He really thought it was that simple. Just a little intimacy, a few sweet words, and she'd be back in his hands again, never questioning, letting him have everything he wanted. A wife, children, and a lover. She had no idea how her husband planned to keep that affair going once they were back in Australia. But she was convinced Nico would find a way. He often traveled to Europe for business, sometimes for a week or two. His father had agreed to the move to Sydney 5 years earlier, as long as it didn't interfere with the Falcone International business. In the beginning of their marriage, she went with him. But not anymore. Not with 2 children to care for. No doubt there would be more trips in the future. Not necessarily to Milan. Nico wasn't that careless. But New York, London, maybe Paris. Cities where the company kept offices and luxury apartments. Places Donatella could easily fly to at a moment's notice without raising suspicion. All it would take was one phone call. And now, with Enrico's death, Nico had the perfect excuse for more travel. Tears welled up, but Isabella promised herself she would stay strong. Tears never solved anyone's problems. Sleep didn't come until just before dawn, and when she woke, Nico was already gone to Milan. But he had left a note on the pillow, saying that after the delightful closeness they'd shared, he wasn't so sure he would be late that night. She whispered in disgust as anxiety tightened inside her. Her body still remembered what he had done just hours earlier. With trembling fingers, she crushed the note in her hand. Isabella told herself it wouldn't be long now until they returned to their true home. Once there, maybe she could face her husband again, draw close to him without feeling so diminished. At least Donatella would be thousands of miles away, making it impossible for Nico to divide his attention between the two of them in the same day. About half an hour later, Isabella opened the children's bedroom door and stepped inside, finding Carla, the Italian nanny, sitting by the window gazing at the lake. The children, as always, were happily occupied with their toys. The young woman turned her head at the sound of the door. Seeing Isabella, she rose with a smile. "Good morning, Signora," she said in English. She enjoyed practicing the language with Isabella and dreamed of visiting Australia one day. "You look so much better today. Your skin is glowing, so much rosier." Unwillingly, Isabella's cheeks flushed even more at the comment. "Yes," she answered curtly. "Thankfully, the migraine is gone. Thank you for looking after the children, Carla. I'll stay with them now. I'll be in the kitchen if you need me," the girl replied, still smiling warmly. She was 20, pretty and kind, and adored by the children. She came from a large family, which had forced her to help her mother from an early age, caring for her younger siblings. "Mama, you woke up so late," Lucia rushed to say. "I missed you." "I missed you too, sweetheart," Isabella replied. "Do you have a hug and a kiss saved for me?" The little girl jumped from her red plastic chair and ran straight into her mother's open arms. Lucia loved hugs and kisses. Matteo, however, Perhaps because of a remark his father had once made about boys clinging to their mother's skirts, acted more distant. Still, he watched with a look of unmistakable jealousy. Isabella set her daughter down and walked over to Matteo, who pretended to ignore her, going back to his wooden horse. "And you? Aren't you to give Mama a hug and a kiss, young man?" she asked gently, crouching beside him. He hesitated, then sighed and threw his arms around her neck with surprising strength. "What's wrong, Matteo?" Isabella asked, unable to hide her concern. The boy pulled back, staring at her with his big, dark eyes. "I want to go home," he whispered. "I miss Tico." A smile of relief touched Isabella's lips. She was almost certain that Tico, a 10-year-old cat, a gift from a neighbor who had moved away, was missing her son too. Matteo had just begun to walk when Mrs. Lake gave him the cat, and back then he had been fascinated with this strange toy that moved on its own and followed him everywhere. "I miss Tico too," she said softly. "We'll be home soon." "I can't wait," he muttered. Isabella sighed. She couldn't agree more. Finally, Isabella let out a long sigh as she carried Lucia up the boarding ramp that led to the jet bound for Sydney. The last 36 hours had been the hardest of her life. She felt like a ticking bomb, ready to explode. Somehow, she had managed to keep up appearances, acting as normal as possible around Nico, which had been anything but easy. Thinking of her husband made her glance back instinctively. He was a few steps behind, walking with the most casual air, holding his laptop in one hand and Matteo's hand in the other. The boy walked proudly beside him, smiling, tried to act like a little man to impress his precious father. Seeing the two of them so happy sent a sharp pang of bitterness through Isabella. She quickly turned away before Nico could notice the resentment on her face. "Want me to carry Lucia?" he asked loudly, as if sensing something strange in her behavior. "No, thank you." Isabella shot back curtly, without turning. "I'm fine." Even though I'm living a lie, she thought, her chest tightening. It was unbearable to pretend everything was fine when she knew their marriage had become nothing more than an arrangement. Unfortunately, she had to look at him again when the flight attendant checked their boarding passes. "My husband has the tickets," she told the young woman, nodding toward Nico and stepping aside. She watched the attendant attend to her husband. Isabella had always known other women found Nico attractive. Waitresses rushed to serve him. Sales clerks bent over backward to please him, and women on the street stared openly as he passed. It had never bothered Isabella before, because she'd been confident in their marriage and trusted him completely. Besides, Nico had never seemed to care about that kind of attention. When they were together, his eyes had always been only for her. He had never given her a single reason to feel jealous, so she had never known the feeling. But now things were different. Now her soul was consumed by a corrosive anger that made her hold her breath as she saw the way the attendant's face lit up, her green eyes shining with obvious interest as they fixed on him. Of course Nico was striking. Any woman would be fascinated, but that didn't mean she had to smile at him like that, right in front of his wife. Didn't the girl have any sense of tact? Or even basic decency? No. Isabella realized bitterly that when it came to men like Nico, the competition was always open, especially when the man in question didn't truly love his wife. Suddenly, Isabella felt sick. Maybe Donatella wasn't even the real problem anymore. Maybe she was trying to save a marriage that had no hope at all. No matter how many humiliations she endured or how many times she looked the other way. "Your seats are in first class, sir," the attendant purred. "Go up the staircase, turn left. Third row from the front, 2 seats on each side of the aisle." "Thank you very much," Nico replied, polite as always. Yet his smile, was it just her imagination, or did it carry a trace of flirtation this time? Was she only now seeing the real Nico Falcone? When he lifted his gaze to hers, Isabella fought desperately to hide her despair. His brows rose slightly before he bent down to speak to his son. "Up you go, Matteo. Here, you can carry my computer, but you must promise to be careful. Did you hear what the lady said? Our seats are in the 3rd row. You can count to 3, can't you?" "I can count to 10. Matteo boasted proudly. "Of course you can. You're a clever boy. In that case, no problem at all. When you reach the 3rd row, sit in the window seat and place a laptop on the seat beside you. We'll be right behind." Mateo hurried up the stairs to follow his father's instructions, while Nico turned to Isabella. "Now let me carry this little one," he said firmly, lifting their sleeping daughter from her arms. "She's too heavy for you on the stairs. Especially today." He glanced meaningfully at her dress. Isabella said nothing, simply turned on her heel and began climbing the steps, and immediately understood what he meant. The long, fitted dress she wore restricted her stride, clinging to her figure with every step. "You look stunning," Nico murmured behind her. The insinuation frustrated Isabella. It wasn't like Nico to behave that way. At that moment, she wished she had chosen something less revealing, something that didn't expose her body so much. The thought had crossed her mind that morning. But if she wanted to keep up the pretense that nothing was wrong, she couldn't start changing her habits now. She had imagined, perhaps naively, that boarding that plane would resolve some of her problems, that everything would settle once Milan and Donatella were behind them. But suddenly Isabella realized she was bringing the problem with her. Nico was a problem. Nico, who consumed her thoughts and emotions. Nico, whom she still loved despite wishing she could hate him. Nico, who at that very moment was 2 steps behind her, complimenting her body, even though his heart belonged to another woman. What an insensitive, distant man she had chosen to marry. Her face burning, Isabella reached the top of the staircase, where another attractive young woman was waiting to greet them, ready to show off the perks of first-class travel. She explained quickly about the lounge at the back of the cabin, the restrooms at the front and rear, and the personalized TV screens at every seat. Isabella handed her coat to the attendant and moved down the aisle until she reached Mateo, already seated. Bending to pick up the laptop and sit, she was met with her son's indignant look. "You can't sit there, Mama. That's Papa's seat. He always sits next to me on planes," Mateo protested. And he was right. Mateo was never easy to manage, especially on long flights. He grew restless when awake, and when tired, he became stubborn and hard to handle. He didn't fall asleep as easily as Lucia. In fact, he didn't seem to need as much sleep as his younger sister. Isabella had learned he behaved far better with Nico beside him. Nico, unlike some indulgent Italian fathers, was affectionate and attentive, but he also expected his son to behave, especially in public. He didn't need to raise a hand. One serious look was enough for Mateo to understand, and Isabella knew exactly how that look felt. It was powerful, commanding, the same look that had seduced her within seconds the first time they met, the same eyes that had drawn her into his bed that very first night. Suddenly, she had the sinking feeling Nico might want to sit beside her during the flight, and she knew she simply couldn't bear it. Ignoring her son's protest, Isabella grabbed the laptop and all but tossed it onto the seat across the aisle. Glancing toward the top of the stairs, she saw the flight attendant now holding Lucia, while Nico slipped off his jacket. The woman was smiling at him in a way far too suggestive, just like the other attendant had done when they first boarded. Typical, Isabella thought fiercely, sinking into the seat beside Mateo. "This time Papa's taking care of Lucia," she told her sulking son firmly. "And you promised to behave, remember? I'm counting on you." Mateo stared at her in surprise. His mother had never spoken to him like that before. "What's going on?" Nico asked as he approached, carrying their daughter. "Are you sure you want to sit there, Isabella?" "I thought it was Lucia's turn to be with you," she shot back curtly. "Great, Papa," Lucia exclaimed, half asleep but pleased. Nico hesitated, frowning as he studied Isabella. "Well, at least until she's asleep," he agreed. "After that, I think we should switch. I want to sit with your mother for a while." He said it while looking at the little girl. Isabella's stomach tightened. She had known this moment would come. "And what about me?" Mateo complained. "You don't need me as a babysitter anymore, young man," Nico said, settling Lucia into the window seat. "In fact, you can look after your mother for me. She seems a bit stressed today. You know how much she hates flying." As Isabella watched him gently arrange the pillows with her daughter, her eyes, against her will, traced the lines of his legs, his hips, his strong body. He really did have a magnificent physique. When he turned, he caught her looking, and his sly smile made her blush. "I'll take care of Mama for you, Papa," Mateo said proudly, puffing out his chest at the responsibility. I can even turn on the TV for her. She's not good with electronics. Sometimes she gets mad at the VCR and says bad words. Really? Nico asked, smiling with mock surprise and glancing mischievously at Isabella. I can't imagine that not your mother. Not your perfect, elegant mother. She does too, Papa, Mateo insisted, ignoring Isabella's sharp glare. The sudden rumble of the plane saved her. Over the speakers, the captain announced they were ready for takeoff. Thank God, Isabella thought. A few more seconds and she would have died of embarrassment. Soon the attendants were serving dinner, and afterward the family took turns going to the restroom to wash up, which kept them busy and mercifully ended the conversation. Eventually, the cabin lights dimmed. Lucia fell asleep almost instantly, followed by Mateo, her little traitor. Isabella could hardly believe it. When Nico leaned across the aisle toward her, her body stiffened. Better switch seats with Lucia, he whispered. She won't wake up again tonight. Why don't we just leave things as they are, Nico? Isabella pleaded, desperation in her voice. No, he said firmly. I want to talk to you, and I don't plan on whispering all night. Knowing she would have no peace if she resisted, Isabella sighed, stood up, and stepped back as Nico gently shifted his daughter into the seat she had been using. The tenderness with which he tucked in the little girl pierced her heart. After carefully adjusting the pillows, he leaned down and kissed her forehead. He did the same with Mateo. Isabella knew then, no matter what, Nico would never ask for a divorce. He would stay married whether he loved her or not. When he straightened, he smiled. Peace at last, he sighed. And privacy. Sit by the window, my dear. I like the thought of having you close, where you can't escape me. She clenched her jaw as she reluctantly sat down. Need some help? Nico asked softly, leaning to fasten her seatbelt. As he did, his arm brushed against hers, making her blush again. Their faces ended up just inches apart. Then he kissed her. Suddenly, without warning, her heart raced wildly. Nico, stop that, she whispered breathlessly when their lips parted. Stop what? Embarrassing me. Someone could see. Everyone's either asleep or glued to their screens, he murmured, eyes locked on hers. And honestly, I don't care. You're so beautiful tonight, so irresistible. You've been driving me crazy since that night. I can't stop thinking about what your lips did to me. With one finger, he traced the outline of her mouth, still damp from his kiss. Such beautiful lips, he whispered. You don't know how stunning they are, or how much that moment meant to me. You'd never done that before. My God, I can't wait to relive it. And then he kissed her again, and she almost kissed him back. Nico, please, Isabella gasped, pulling herself upright. I can't. Not here. I just can't. He blinked, startled, as if the idea of refusal had never crossed his mind. But strangely, it seemed to excite him even more. No, of course you can't, he said, raising his brows. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. I'd never ask you to do something against your will. Hey, calm down. I must have misread the way you were looking at me. I thought... Well, it doesn't matter now. Clearly, I was wrong. Stretching out his arms, he drew her against him. Come here, don't cry. You're just tired. That's all. Traveling with the children is always stressful. But soon we'll be home, and life can get back to normal, right? He pulled back a little to look into her teary eyes. Can you forgive me? She only blinked, saying nothing. Nico sighed. You have to understand how incredible that night was. I wouldn't be a normal man if I didn't want to relive it. But believe me, I never meant here on this plane. I'd never do anything to hurt you or humiliate you. Never. His embrace tightened as he apologized again. Isabella wanted to forgive. She wanted to forget everything. But forgiveness was impossible. Something cold and dangerous was rising inside her. Strong. Overwhelming. It was clear, she realized sadly, that she stood at a crossroads. Her emotions could only lead her to two possible destinies, divorce or a life of humiliation. She needed to talk to someone, to hear advice from a voice of reason. But she could never go to her mother. She couldn't bear the judgment, the I told you so. There had to be someone else she could turn to, But who? Fortunately, Nico had arranged for a car to be waiting at Mascot Airport. The very last thing Isabella wanted at that moment was to stand in a long taxi line. She wondered if she looked as awful as she felt while walking through customs, carrying Lucia in her arms. Matteo, also fast asleep, rested in his father's arms. Their luggage was piled on a trolley, which Nico pushed with his one free hand. He always said the worst part about living in Australia was the distance, the endless hours of travel whenever they visited his family or had business abroad. But he also swore he would never raise their children anywhere else. He loved the country's lifestyle, the climate, and its low crime rate. Still, this flight had felt endless to Isabella. Even though both children had slept through most of it, she had slept too, though not as much as she'd hoped. They'd had a layover in Bangkok, but Isabella hadn't even considered leaving the plane. Nico had taken the children with him, saying he needed to stretch his legs. Isabella had been relieved to stay behind alone, her tension easing the moment her husband walked away. But the question lingered, what would things be like from now on? That thought haunted her more than anything. At the arrival's exit, the company driver stood, holding a placard with their name. Nico introduced himself, then handed over the trolley with their bags. "This way," the driver said. "Is the car far?" Nico asked as they walked. "Not at all." He led them through a glass door and out into the open air. "Good," Nico replied. "My family's exhausted. Especially the children, poor things." He added with a smile at Isabella. She hated herself for deliberately turning her face away, unable to meet his tender gaze. Was it her imagination, or was Nico being overly attentive all of a sudden? It wasn't fair to say he wasn't a caring husband. He was. But during the flight, he had been so attentive it almost raised her suspicions. Guilt, she thought bitterly. What else could it be? Why else would he suddenly be acting so differently? "There's chaos in the city," the driver explained once they reached the curb. "Too many tourists for the Olympics. Luckily, it'll calm down soon. The car is just there to the right." Outside, the spring air was crisp and dry, with not a cloud in the sky. The sun promised to bring warmth in just a few hours. The sleek car waiting for them near the corner was a limousine. Isabella noticed with surprise. But if this was Nico's latest trick to please her, it wasn't going to work. "Mama?" Lucia mumbled sleepily as soon as they settled inside. "Yes, sweetheart." "I need the bathroom." "Me too," Matteo chimed in, looking urgently at his father. Isabella couldn't help smiling. At least her children were behaving, as if everything was normal. "All right," Nico said with a sigh. Everyone back out again. While waiting for Lucia at the restroom, Isabella smoothed her hair, washed her face, and studied her reflection. Strangely, her expression didn't reveal the storm she had been living through the last few days. That in itself was surprising. Nico and Matteo were already back in the limousine by the time she returned with Lucia. "You look 100% better," Nico said, his voice laced with concern. "I was starting to worry." "We women recover quickly," Isabella replied, unable to hold back. "But some damage can't be repaired, Nico. You do well to remember that." His startled expression gave her no satisfaction. Neither did his obvious inability to respond to such a cryptic remark. Was this the beginning of the end? Moments later, the limousine pulled out of the airport, and Matteo began pestering his father about his cat. "Can we stop at Grandma's to pick up Tico, Papa?" "Not now, Matteo. She lives all the way in Turamura. That's over an hour's drive. Your mother can take you tomorrow while I'm at work." Isabella's eyes widened. "You're working tomorrow?" she asked, her voice edged with suspicion. "On a Sunday?" Nico never worked on Sundays. Sometimes a Saturday, yes, but never Sundays. That was family day. The zoo, the beach, the cinema. Why now? Why this urgency? Was Sunday simply an excuse to call Donatella in private? But his expression didn't waver. "Isabella, today is Sunday. Tomorrow's Monday. We lost a day on the return trip because of the time difference." "Oh, of course. How stupid of me," she muttered. But another thought struck. "But then, my mother will be working tomorrow, too." Nico shrugged. "Does it matter? You have her house keys. You can stop by and pick up the cat." Did it occur to you, Isabella snapped, that I might want to see my mother? That maybe I missed her. I thought you might be too tired, he said gently, though clearly unsettled. This isn't like you, Isabella. You've never been this irritable before. And honestly, I've never seen you so eager to visit your mother. Her chin lifted in defiance. My mother and I are closer than you think. And suddenly, Isabella realized maybe her mother was the one she should talk to. She couldn't keep this bottled up forever. I'll go see her this afternoon, she announced flatly, while the children are napping. But I want to see Grandma too, Mama, Mateo piped up. Me too. Lucia added quickly. Not today, Isabella said firmly. You'll stay home. Your father will watch you. I need to speak with Grandma privately. What about? Nico asked, puzzled. Mother-daughter things, Isabella replied coolly. Women's things. Nothing you'd be interested in. You mean that migraine you had the other day? My mother mentioned you thought it might be related to PMS. I never realized you suffer from that. Isabella, you never mentioned before. What's PMS? Mateo asked. The perpetual misery of suffering mothers, Isabella quipped, shooting her son a look. Nico chuckled, leaning closer in a way that unnerved her. Quick answer. You know something? You're sharper than usual since we got back. Isabella's face darkened. What's that supposed to mean? That I'm a dumb blonde. His smile vanished instantly. Nico wasn't used to such barbed responses from his wife. You really are on edge. I hope it's just a flight. I'm counting on your mood improving by Wednesday. Wednesday? Why? His brows rose. It's our anniversary. Oh, yes. I forgot for a moment. He looked more intrigued than ever. Your anniversary? Mateo asked. On the same day? Yeah, son, Nico said, his gaze still locked on Isabella. On Wednesday, it will be 5 years since I married your mother. Will we have a big party? Like when I turned 4? No, Nico said with a smile. Couples don't throw parties like that until their 25th anniversary. Isabella almost laughed bitterly. At the rate things were going, they'd be lucky to make it to year 6. Until then, Nico went on, couples celebrate in private. This year, for example, I have a special plan for your mother. I only hope she has thought of something special for me as well. The implication in his tone made Isabella flush deeply. Do you exchange gifts? Clever little Lucia asked her father. Of course, he replied with a smile. Are you going to give Papa a present, Mama? The girl asked excitedly. Lucia was a born shopper. Nothing made her happier than buying things, not even her dolls. We'll see, darling, Isabella answered, grateful for an excuse to avoid Nico's penetrating gaze. Your mother doesn't need to buy me anything this year, Lucia, he murmured smoothly. What I'm hoping for is something money can't buy. And what's that, Papa? Mateo asked. No, Antonio says there's nothing money can't buy. Did he? Well, even Nono is wrong sometimes. I'm talking about love. Son, you can't buy love. No, Isabella thought in despair. That much was true. Otherwise, she would gladly sell everything she owned to buy back her husband's love. But she knew Nico wasn't really talking about love. He meant intimacy. The heated, consuming passion she had given him the other night. Despite whatever he still felt for Donatella, he clearly still wanted Isabella in his bed. Perhaps now more than ever. She had shown him a different side of herself, and Nico was eager to see it again. Yes, Nico, Isabella murmured bitterly, relieved that she could change the subject as soon as the car pulled to a stop. Ah, we're here. That didn't take long. One of the advantages of living so close to the airport, isn't it? Come on, children. Unfasten your seatbelts. Let's go see if everything is in order at home. She already had the house keys in hand when they reached the front door. Nico stayed behind to unload the luggage and dismiss the driver. The moment the door opened, the children raced to the hall, dashing upstairs to check their rooms. At last, home. Their home. The exterior of the house was nothing special. Nico had bought it for convenience, just 5 minutes from the warehouse and Falcon International's offices. But Isabella loved it, especially for the sweeping view of Botany Bay. Mama, my room's perfect. Lucia reported breathlessly, rushing down the stairs. All my dolls are there. Of course they are, silly, Mateo teased, though he had gone to check his own room too. Mama was only joking, he added with an innocent grin toward Isabella. Yes, Mama was only joking, sweetheart, she said, bending down to hug both children. Looks like being back home has improved your mood, Nico observed as he entered, setting the luggage down and joining them. I only hope Mama saved a few kisses for me, he teased Mateo. No, the boy protested, wrapping his small arms tightly around Isabella's neck. I want all of them. There'll be plenty of kisses to go around, Isabella said, glancing at Lucia's jealous expression. Good to hear, Nico whispered. The mischievous tone in his voice irritated Isabella deeply. So, they were back to that again, intimacy. Was that all he ever thought about? Or was this so-called rekindled passion just another way to distract himself from the woman he truly desired? At the very least, can I expect a decent cup of coffee? He asked. Isabella straightened and glared at him. Of course you can expect one, she murmured between clenched teeth. That doesn't mean you'll get it. Their eyes locked. Once, Nico's hard stare would have frightened her. Not now. Go wash your hands and faces, children, she instructed coldly, ignoring her husband again. Then go to the kitchen for breakfast. The children ran off to the bathroom, leaving husband and wife alone. What's gotten into you? Nico muttered. I don't know what you mean, Isabella replied with feigned sweetness, turning toward the kitchen. But Nico wasn't about to give up. You know exactly what I mean, he growled, following her closely. Don't play dumb with me, Isabella. Why not? She shot back, stopping to face him with disdain. You always liked it before. His expression was one of pure shock. As Isabella moved toward the refrigerator, Nico grabbed her arms and spun her around, forcing her to face him. She looked first at his strong hands, then into his furious eyes. Her gaze was icy. Let me go, Nico, she said, staring him down. He released her instantly, anguish clouding his features. Moments later, he sighed heavily and ran his fingers through his hair. Isabella had never seen him so shaken. I'm sorry, he murmured. I never meant to hurt you. I just wanted to talk to me, to tell me what's wrong. Isabella genuinely wished she could speak, because just thinking about Donatella poisoned her from the inside. She might have been able to endure the idea that her husband had once been engaged to the Italian. As Antonio had said, that was the past. But still being in love? Carrying that flame for so many years. It was inevitable that someday they would have to talk about Donatella. But not now. Not yet. Soon the children would return, and Isabella had no intention of starting a confrontation in front of them. Thinking of the children brought a little sanity back to her tormented soul. Nico, please, let's set this aside for now. No, he said stubbornly. You're angry with me for some reason, and I don't know why. I think that's exactly the problem, Nico, she replied slowly. You don't know why. You're speaking in riddles, woman. That was exactly the wrong thing to say. Stop calling me that, she snapped, her temper flaring. My name is Isabella. Isabella, do you understand? Stop calling me woman. Oh, I see, he murmured slowly. This must be some kind of feminist issue. That's why you're so eager to run back to your precious mother. What is it, Isabella? Are you unhappy being only a wife and mother? Is that it? Do you want more? A career, perhaps? Or is it me you're dissatisfied with? Have I not given you the attention you suddenly seem to crave? If that's the case, then let me make one thing clear. I'm your husband. Do you really think I haven't noticed how different things have been between us this past year? But let me tell you this. No one can live on pretenses forever without looking for answers somewhere else. Isabella stared at him, stunned by his attack, furious that Nico would use such an excuse for his own betrayal. True, she had faked a few orgasms recently. Was that really so much worse than saying, not tonight, I have a headache? At least he had been satisfied. She was about to fire back when Lucia suddenly burst into the kitchen. Mama, I'm clean now, the little girl announced, tugging on Isabella's skirt. I want a peanut butter sandwich and orange juice. Summoning her strength, Isabella crouched down and scooped her daughter into her arms. Anything you want, darling. The sudden interruption left Nico deflated, at a loss for what to do. I see you have to take care of the children now. I'll call my parents and let them know we arrived safely. Fine, Isabella agreed, infinitely relieved to see him leave the kitchen. By the time Nico returned much later, she regained some temporary control over herself. I won't go to my mother's until the children are asleep, she said carefully, pouring herself a cup of coffee. They won't disturb you. Nico stood in the doorway, watching her. Isabella, you'll have to tell me what's bothering you. Yes, I know, she admitted. But not now. Why not? We're alone. He was right. The children had finished breakfast and were in the living room, watching television. Tonight, after the children are in bed. Tonight, then, Nico agreed reluctantly, letting out a long sigh. Coming here was a mistake, Isabella thought as she finished telling her sad story. The look on her mother's face said it all. The famous, "I told you so," didn't even need to be spoken. What a bastard. Rosa snapped. And to think I was almost convinced Nico was different, that he loved you nearly as much as you loved him, that he was a good husband and father, nothing like the scoundrels I married. I was this close to softening my views of the male species. I had even begun to look at men differently, men I've met recently. Isabella was speechless. She had never imagined her mother would one day give men another chance. But all this proves, Rosa went on with disdain, is that your beloved Nico is simply a little more clever than most men. And what exactly do you think Nico wants, mother? Isabella asked in a trembling voice. A beautiful wife who adores him enough to stay at home, playing the full-time mother and homemaker. That way, he's free to do whatever he wants, whenever he wants, without being questioned. That's not fair. I chose to be a full-time mother and homemaker. Really? Funny. I recall you once telling me you want to go back to work. I'll wager Nico shut that idea down quickly. He wouldn't want to see his beautiful wife out in the big, bad world. Meanwhile, he's free to take any woman he pleases, including his brother's widow. Oh, yes, don't doubt it. He slept with Donatella. You can never fully trust men, Isabella. Most are selfish, deceitful, and weak. Thank you for reminding me of that. A tense silence followed. Isabella felt even more crushed. I need a cigarette, Rosa muttered, snatching a fresh pack from the garden table with trembling hands. I left my lighter inside. I won't be long. Isabella sat there, uneasy. It was strange. Her mother was only voicing aloud the same suspicions she herself had entertained. But coming from Rosa's lips, none of it sounded right. The description didn't fit Nico. He wasn't weak. He wasn't a liar. Selfish, perhaps, yes, that trait ran in every Falcone. But on the whole, he treated her and the children with real consideration. I've been trying to quit smoking, her mother declared as she returned. Isabella blinked in surprise. Her mother had smoked 4 packs a day for years and had never once tried to cut back. I did it because of the last man I met. Can you believe that? I even dyed my hair, Rosa murmured between drags. Isabella's eyes widened as she stared at her mother's hair. Dear God, she really had done it. Well, it actually looks very good, Mother, she said honestly. To be frank, your whole appearance looks better. You've even put on a little weight, haven't you? That's from quitting smoking. I was even going to ask you to help me with makeup and clothes this week. But not now. God, what a fool I was. Smiling bitterly, she took another deep drag. And what a fool you've been, she added, turning to Isabella. I warned you Nico could make your life miserable, and I was right. You were wrong. Isabella shot back. Nico has made me very happy. He's a wonderful husband and father. Please, don't use my little personal crisis as an excuse to fuel your old bitterness, or to start smoking again. Rosa gave a harsh, mocking laugh. Little personal crisis, honestly. Your husband doesn't love you, Isabella. He's just using you. Don't be so dramatic, Mother. Nico does love me. He told me so just last night. Her mother shook her head. I can't believe I'm hearing this. Well, you are, and you'll hear more. I've been acting just like you, but now I can see how unfair I've been. I condemned Nico without even hearing his side. I played prosecutor, judge, and jury. I have no real evidence that he's been unfaithful. I don't even know if he's still in love with Donatella. All I have are rumors, assumptions, and suspicions. You're forgetting the fact that he lied about where he was that night, and what you told me about him acting guilty, not to mention his sudden lack of appetite in bed. Twisted as it was, the more her mother condemned Nico, the more Isabella felt compelled to defend him. Nico explained everything. He'd just taken a cold shower. Rosa rolled her eyes. Oh, for heaven's sake, girl, use your head. Why wouldn't Nico tell you he'd once been engaged to Donatella unless he still loved her? Why should he? That was long before we even met. Besides, Nico isn't the type to dwell on the past. As far as I remember, he's never once asked about my former boyfriends. And of course he knows I had at least one. I wasn't a virgin when we met. Which only proves my point, don't you see? Her mother pressed. When a man is desperately in love, he wants to know every detail of a woman's past. But apparently Nico didn't, and I have to wonder why not. Her mother's merciless logic struck Isabella like a knife. Why indeed had Nico never asked about her past? I'll tell you why, Rosa continued, before Isabella had time to think of a single reason. He doesn't care how many men you've been with, because he doesn't love you, because he's still in love with Donatella. Nico only married you because of the pregnancy and, of course, for the intimacy. At last Isabella spotted a flaw in her mother's logic. I doubt he married me just for intimacy, Mother. We were already doing that, and plenty of it. But you're right about one thing. He probably did marry me because of the pregnancy. Children are very important to Italian men. But that doesn't mean Nico doesn't love me, or that he's still in love with that foolish Donatella. Honestly, a woman would have to be stupid to trade Nico for anyone else, especially his brother. Enrico was a scoundrel. Scoundrels come in all shapes, Rosa remarked, and not all of them are obvious. Nico is no scoundrel. He's a good man. Now I regret even thinking he might be unfaithful. I should have had more faith in him. That would be blindness. Tell me, darling, what does this Donatella look like? Something tells me she can't be ugly. Isabella's body stiffened. I won't lie. She's a beautiful woman. And yet you said Nico never slept with her when they were engaged. That's right. Donatella played the shy virgin, saving herself for her wedding night. But apparently she acted differently with his rotten brother. In fact, Nico caught them in the act. Did I mention that before? No, Rose replied, frowning. No, you didn't. But that only proves what I've always said. Italian men have a fierce code of pride. It's hard to believe Nico wouldn't seize the chance to prove he was a better man by taking back the woman his brother stole. Desperate, Isabella searched for reasons not to believe her mother. You're forgetting Donatella's part in all this. She was utterly devoted to Enrico. To be honest, she was inconsolable at his funeral. Perhaps, but Enrico's death must have left her terribly lonely. Do you honestly believe she could resist if Nico decided to seduce her? Even I must admit, Nico is the most sensual man I've ever met. We have no evidence any seduction happened. Isabella protested weakly. Oh, come now. Nico was at her apartment. For hours. You told me that yourself. Isabella began to feel furious at her mother for being so sharp and at herself for being so stubborn. There could be many reasons for that. He might have gone to pick up his brother's personal documents, for example. Then why lie about it? I don't know, she whispered. Why didn't you ask him? Why didn't you tell him what you overheard and clear this whole thing up? You think I haven't thought of that? Isabella whispered. But where would that kind of confrontation lead? Bitter arguments would be inevitable, and in the end, it would only end in divorce. You can't fix something once it's broken, you know that. So you'd rather just look the other way? Her mother asked, shocked. You're comfortable living like that? I'm not happy, Mother. That's why I came here to talk to you. I needed to tell someone or I would have gone mad. But I have to think of the children's happiness too, not just my wounded pride. Yes, of course, Rosa said darkly. The children? Forgive me, Isabella. I forgot about them for a moment. Yes, I understand your dilemma. Matteo and Lucia adore Nico. Whatever may or may not have happened with Donatella, he's a wonderful father. I don't want a divorce, Mother. I really don't. Then what do you plan to do? Anguish drained the color from Isabella's face. I was hoping you would tell me. I came here desperate for some practical advice. Advice that could save my marriage, not destroy it. Oh, darling, I'm so sorry. Rose's tone softened, showing rare concern. I know how much you love Nico. I've always thought you love him too much. But very well, I'll do my best to help. Just don't blame me if I say things you don't want to hear. I'll try not to. That's fair. So let's start from the beginning. Forget Donatella for a moment and think about your role in this marriage. The truth is, I never thought you were meant to be a traditional wife and mother. Staying home all the time to satisfy your husband's every wish and stroke his enormous ego. Some women can live like that and be perfectly content. But you, Isabella, you have too much personality, too much intelligence to live in such an unequal arrangement. Isabella was unsettled by her mother's sharp, almost objective observations. Where exactly was Rosa going with this? I know you don't see yourself that way, darling, but it's hard to recognize the truth when you're living inside it. Your father once told me I was more like a wildcat, and you're the same. You chose to play the saint in your marriage because you saw the mess I made in mine. But now, the tigress has escaped, and I fear you won't be able to lock her back in the cage. What are you smiling at, child? What did I say? It's just that. Nico called me the other night. Isabella admitted softly. He said I was a tigress. And that wasn't a criticism. Oh, no. He actually liked that I was a tigress in bed, Isabella confessed, embarrassed. Men always like bold women in bed. They just don't expect them to start acting differently outside of it. Look, maybe it would be easier if you simply ignored what happened in Italy and try to go on as before. But you can't do that, can you? That's why you're here, isn't it? Isabella nodded. I thought so. Listen to me. Why not just start by asking Nico about his engagement to Donatella? Tell him you overheard someone mention it recently. See how he reacts. The idea left Isabella mortified. Don't accuse him of anything. Her mother continued calmly. If you accuse him of adultery and he's guilty, he'll deny it, and your marriage will suffer anyway. If he's innocent, he'll be deeply offended, and the result will be the same. It's a no-win situation for a wife. You really think he slept with her? Isabella asked in a trembling whisper. Her mother's expression was full of sympathy, but her voice stayed firm. Don't bury your head in the sand. Isabella, given the circumstances, yes, Nico might have slept with her, but that doesn't mean he loves her. What's clear is that Nico was happy to be with you when he came home that night. He even told you he loved you. So whatever happened or didn't happen, he clearly has no intention of leaving you or the children. 2 oceans separate him from that Donatella woman. She poses no real threat to your marriage. You're right. Isabella agreed with sudden relief. She's there and I'm here. Honestly, I'd be a fool to bring her up. No, I'll go home and keep my mouth shut. She reached across the table and squeezed her mother's hand. No matter what you think, you're a good mother. And you don't sound nearly as bitter as usual. Which reminds me, tell me about this man you met. He must be something special if he made you run straight to the hairdresser. Isabella could hardly believe the dreamy look that came over Rosa's face. He's so handsome, Isabella, and he's only 45, 2 years younger than me. He's a lawyer. I met him in court. To be fair, I won the case, but honestly, his client never had a chance. After that, we kept running into each other accidentally, and every time he'd stop to talk. He says I have a brilliant mind. But it's not just your mind you want him to notice. Isabella teased with a smile. Her mother blushed. I've been so lonely, Isabella. You have no idea. I think I do, Mother. We Bellini women were not made for celibacy. We're tigresses in life and in everything we do. Go for it. That's all I have to say. So when are we going shopping for new clothes for you? I'll call you tomorrow night, and then we'll set a day this week. That way, I can also find out how things are going with Nico. Deal. Isabella stood up. Well, I'd better be going. Aren't you forgetting something, darling? Isabella raised her eyebrows. What? Rosa pointed to the lazy cat. sprawled out asleep on the grass. Rolling her eyes, Isabella pressed her hands to her head. Good heavens, I'd forget my head if it wasn't attached. If I went home without the cat, I'd really be in trouble. Come on, Tico, she murmured, bending to scoop him into her arms. Let's go home. Time to face the ghosts. It was just past 4 o'clock when Isabella parked her blue Falcon next to Nico's red Alfa Romeo in the garage. On the drive back home, she had almost convinced herself that her husband hadn't been unfaithful, that he loved her, not Donatella. But the sight of that flashy sports car, along with the memories of the impetuous moments they had shared inside it, reminded her all too well of what Nico was capable of. With a sigh, Isabella covered her face with both hands. Moments later, the sound of a car door opening startled her. She looked to the side. Nico was there, watching her intently. What are you doing, hiding in the car? He asked sharply. I heard the engine and saw you pulling a while ago. What is it now? You can't even come inside and be alone with me. Isabella wasn't used to seeing her husband so offended. It was rare. Don't raise your voice at me, she replied coldly, pushing past him as she stepped out. And don't try to intimidate me, she added, catching the outraged look in his eyes. I won't tolerate that anymore. Her shout was followed by the slam of the car door. Now Nico truly looked incensed. I wasn't hiding in the car, Isabella said firmly. I was just trying to put my thoughts in order before coming in to tell you what's really bothering me. To hell with common sense, she decided bitterly. She could no longer pretend everything was the same as before. She had to know how Nico really felt about Donatella. That's what I wanted to find out this morning, he muttered. But that was before you ran off to your mother, leaving me alone with the 2 most spoiled and impossible creatures I've ever dealt with in my life. The outburst caught Isabella off guard. Only then did she remember. It was the first time Nico had ever been completely alone with the children for more than a few minutes. She could imagine his afternoon hadn't been easy. After the long flight, the children had surely been restless and cranky. The thought made her momentarily forget about Donatella. Did they misbehave? She asked with a sly smile. To put it mildly, Nico grumbled. But I put them to bed before I left. You may have, but they were still awake. The moment you walked out, the house turned into chaos. Lucia started crying because she forgot a doll in Italy. Then Matteo began whining endlessly that he missed the cat. Nico stopped suddenly, a look of relief flashing across his face as he glanced toward the back seat. Thank God you didn't forget that damn cat. Otherwise, I have had to drive that impossible boy all the way to Turamura myself. Why does he think that animal is so indispensable? To him, Tico is like a mix between a blanket and a motorized toy. Your son likes having him nearby when he watches his favorite videos. Don't remind me, Nico groaned. When it became clear the kids weren't going to sleep, I let them get up and turn on the TV. That's when my little tyrant informed me he wanted to watch the Wally the Dragon tape. Well, do you think I could find it? Of course not. It's his favorite cartoon, Isabella murmured, trying not to laugh. Well, where's it hidden then? Certainly not on the shelf with the other videos. It's probably in his toy box. Matteo watches that tape so often he sometimes leaves in his room. Nico rolled his eyes. I'd never have thought to look there. Where are the children now? Oh, they're asleep now. I finally got them to bed, but only after reading them dozens of stories. And the worst part? They're in our bed, he added bitterly. It was the only way I could calm them down. They thought it was a fantastic deal, since we never let them sleep there. I see, Isabella murmured. Nico sighed, his expression showing just how exhausted he was. You know, Isabella, this afternoon made me realize how hard it must be for you to care for them every single day. And yet, you never complain. You always look fresh when I come home, the house spotless, dinner ready. Now I finally understand why you must feel tired sometimes, and why you're not always in the mood for intimacy. But please, Isabella, don't ever pretend with me. If you don't want it, just say so. And if something else is bothering you, tell me. I want you happy, he said softly, brushing a finger against her cheek. I can't stand seeing you upset. This was her chance. And yet Isabella hesitated. Her husband was being so kind, so understanding, so tender. How could she bring up Donatella? To do so would destroy any hope of reconciliation. Aren't you happy you married me anymore, Isabella? Nico asked, clearly troubled by her silence. Do you not love me anymore? I could ask you the same question, Nico, she replied quietly. To me? He looked stunned. Yes. Aren't you happy with me? Do you not love me anymore? You're crazy. Of course I'm happy in our marriage. And as for loving you, he paused, his voice firm. I love you now more than ever. Tears filled Isabella's eyes. Do you really, Nico? Are you telling me the truth? Holding back a sigh, he drew her into his arms. Where did you get such ridiculous ideas? My God, Isabella, I adore you. You and the children, you're my life. As he said it, Nico suddenly pulled back to look her in the eyes. Has someone been filling your head with rumors? Oh, if only he knew. The truth, Nico, she began carefully, is that you had never really told me you loved me before. And I accidentally overheard something back in Italy that left me worried. Nico looked stunned. His face paled. What? He pressed. What did you hear? That you were once engaged to Donatella, Isabella murmured, her voice unsteady. His expression turned dark. Who told you that? Your mother. He muttered something in Italian. Words Isabella had never heard before, but had no doubt were obscenities. Are you trying to tell me it isn't true? She asked fearfully. Depending on his answer, she would know if he was lying. No, it's true, Nico admitted reluctantly. Strange. He hadn't lied, yet Isabella didn't feel relieved. Why didn't you ever tell me? Because I thought it would hurt you. That's why I asked my family never to mention it in front of you. Why would the truth hurt me? Nico looked uneasy. Please, Isabella, just trust me. I love you. I've always loved you. Then why didn't you tell me about Donatella? She insisted. Nico, I need a logical reason, or else I'll start imagining terrible things. His expression shifted. Because my engagement to her ended just before I met you. I thought you might think, damn it, I don't want anything to ruin what we have. How long before me? Do we really have to drag up ancient history? Yes, Nico, we do. He exhaled heavily. I broke off my engagement to Donatella 1 week before I met you. Isabella turned pale. 1 week? Just 1 week. How could you be in love with her 1 week and with me the next? Because I was never really in love with her. It was nothing more than a mistake, a delusion. She hated that word. Delusion made her think of something uncontrollable. An obsession. She stared at her husband. If he would only tell her the truth about his brother and Donatella. Maybe she could believe him. And what ended your engagement? She asked, holding her breath. My God, what else did you hear? Nico demanded, looking tormented. And why was my mother gossiping about Donatella and me, and to whom? She was talking to your father. But I walked away and didn't hear anything else. The lie rolled off her tongue naturally, but was it for her own benefit, or his? Clearly, Nico didn't want to speak of finding his brother in bed with Donatella. And, in a way, Isabella could understand. Her husband was a proud man. I'll have a word with Mama about this, Nico muttered angrily. I won't let my family create trouble in our marriage without cause. No, Nico, don't. Please, just forget it. But can you forget it? It's obvious this has been eating at you. Your tears on the plane, the strange remarks, the irritation. I see it all now. His eyes were full of sadness and regret. It must have been awful for you, thinking I married you without love, that I stood by you when our son was born, not loving you. Let me assure you, Isabella, it wasn't like that. I've always loved you with all my heart. Yes, I feel guilty for not saying it. I struggled with that word in the past, but not anymore. I promise. In fact, I told you so after we made love the other night, but you fell asleep before you heard me. I heard you, she whispered. You, he stopped, then shook his head slowly, sorrowfully. You don't believe me. I don't know what to believe. You ignored me for so long, and when I touched you that night, I thought you didn't want me anymore. Is that why you've been so distant? Why, yes, she admitted, hesitant. Nico brushed his fingertip over her lips. You're extraordinary, he murmured. I'll make it up to you on Wednesday night. I promise. I take it we'll have to wait until then. His voice had turned husky. Isabella knew exactly what he meant. I'm afraid so, she said softly, knowing her cycle would be over by then. But a kiss or two isn't out of the question, is it? She gave him her lips slowly, her heart soaring with joy. Nico loved her. He always had. Donatella was a past. Just as she had told her mother, Nico had only gone to that old apartment to collect Enrico's papers. He hadn't wanted to say it aloud, afraid of fueling rumors. His mother had been wrong. She worried too much. Once again safe and filled with love, Isabella returned his kiss with passion, her arms winding tightly around his neck. He responded with heat and urgency, leaving her breathless. His kiss carried all the fire he felt for her. She deepened the kiss, unwilling to let him go, unwilling for it to end. Only where her head began to spin did she finally break away, gasping for air. You're playing dirty, you know that? Nico murmured, gripping her waist and pressing her against the car. You deserve to suffer for all the worry you've caused me, Isabella whispered, breathless. And I want you to keep suffering until Wednesday. So that's how it's going to be? Casually, he traced her shoulders, tugging the fabric until it slipped, making her shiver. Nico, she whispered, half protest, half plea. Yes, my love, he murmured, leaning in to kiss her again, just as fiercely as before. I. Abruptly, Nico pulled back, adjusting her dress, slipping the straps back into place. I want you to suffer while you wait, he murmured, brushing her lips once more. I want you so wound up by Wednesday that you won't be able to hide a thing from me. No more secrets, Isabella, and no more pretending. From now on, when we make love, it'll be real, more real than anything we've ever known. That's my promise to you. His dark eyes locked onto hers. If I had a camera, I'd capture your lips right now, a mix of shock and sensuality. It'll be hard to wait, but it'll make everything better when the time comes. He kissed her trembling lips again. Now, let's get that cat out of the car and inside before the children wake up. Isabella blinked, then silently watched her husband take Tico's carrier from the back seat and walk to the front door. She followed him, her lips still tingling, her body still on edge. Nico, meanwhile, walked with confidence, his manner firm and controlled. No one would have guessed what he'd been doing just a minute earlier. She had always known her husband could master his self-control when needed, and she admired that. But she had no doubt she would be the one to suffer most until Wednesday. Nico could distract himself with work. He could sleep soundly, shutting out the world the moment his head hit the pillow. She, on the other hand, would think of him all day, and at least half the night. Real. That was his promise. More real than anything they had ever shared. Isabella wondered what he meant. After all, there was nothing they hadn't already experienced together. Or so she thought. Then she remembered the new ways he had begun exploring her body, and realized there must be countless nuances of intimacy she had never known. Compared to him, she must seem inexperienced. When he had met her, Nico was 32, a wealthy, handsome, sophisticated man who had traveled the world. Yes, he had experienced many things. Not sleeping with Donatella didn't mean he hadn't known other women, experienced women, before her, while Isabella had only dated a few young men before Nico, boys full of eagerness but not much skill. That was why Nico had swept her off her feet so quickly. He had known how to awaken her, how to make her feel things she'd never felt. But maybe on a scale of 1 to 10, what they'd shared until now had only reached halfway. Maybe Nico intended to take her to 6 to 10 on Wednesday. A tiny gasp escaped her lips, and Nico, walking ahead, stopped and glanced back over his shoulder. What is it now? He asked. Her heart raced. I didn't say anything. I could swear I heard you. It was nothing. Really nothing. His eyes narrowed. I thought we agreed no more secrets. After Wednesday night, she reminded him with a nervous smile. His full lips curved into a knowing grin. All right, I can wait until then. But after that, you're going to tell me everything on your mind. You'll bare your soul to me, Isabella, before I'm through with you." A shiver coursed through her, and she had no doubt he meant it. At 7:30 on Wednesday evening, Isabella was anxious, hopeful, yet even more nervous. That morning, Nico had called from the office, telling her he had changed his plans for their anniversary. He asked her to pack a bag for an overnight trip, since they wouldn't be returning home until the next morning. "Please, don't argue," he had added quickly. "I've already arranged for someone to take care of the children." Isabella had felt excited, but also uneasy. The babysitting agency they usually used was reliable, but she had never left the children overnight with anyone other than her mother. When she mentioned this, Nico surprised her by saying it would, in fact, be Rosa who stayed with them. He had called her personally, and Rosa had agreed to come straight to the house after finishing at the office. Isabella expected her mother to arrive just after 6, which gave her enough time to bathe, feed, and put the children to bed before focusing on herself. Nico had also told her he would arrive precisely at 8, already dressed for the evening. She was to wear the red velvet dress, silk stockings, high heels, and nothing else. And nothing else. Nothing else, she had repeated, her stomach twisting. "Makeup and perfume will be acceptable," he murmured. But, nothing else, Isabella. Not a single piece. Not even jewelry. Her whole body had trembled. "And what about my hair?" "Put it up. Leave the way clear." "Clear for what?" "For me." Suddenly she had caught herself, realizing she was losing control again, letting Nico dominate, letting him hold all the cards. "I'll do it, Nico," she had said, her voice icy. "But only because I want to. The idea excites me, that's all." Have I awakened the tigress again, Mia Miketta?" "More than you can imagine." He had laughed. "Now I'm even more eager for tonight. I'll see you at 8. And with that, he had hung up. What bravado, Isabella thought now as she examined her reflection. Why on earth did I agree to this? The velvet clung to her body like a second skin. The cut was simple, yet provocatively revealing. She felt as if she were walking naked. At least she didn't have to worry about straps or lingerie lines showing through the fabric. She told herself, trying once more to summon the tigress inside her, but the tigress felt caged. Right now, Isabella felt more like a frightened kitten, edgy and ready to bolt at the slightest sign. The problem was, there was nowhere to run. Nico would arrive in minutes. Thank God she had managed to finish her hair and makeup. "Isabella," her mother called from the other side of the bedroom door. "It's 10 to 8. Are you ready?" "Just a minute." Isabella answered quickly. "Hurry then. You don't want to keep Nico waiting, do you?" Thankfully, Rosa didn't step inside. Isabella glanced at the mirror one last time. "Dear God," she whispered inwardly. The dress left nothing to the imagination. It was obvious she wore no bra, and the thought made her flush. And the rest, well, no one else would know she had no underthings. But the very knowledge of it made her restless. Every step in her high heels made the delicate velvet brush against her bare skin in the most unsettling way. Nico knew exactly what he was doing. He knew exactly how it would affect her. She looked like a woman who had just stepped out of an illicit encounter and was ready for more. Not like an ordinary wife, but like the mistress of a wealthy man. Shaken, Isabella waited until the last possible moment to go downstairs. The children were already asleep, and her mother was in the living room watching television. Rosa lifted her head as Isabella entered and whistled. "Honestly, Mama," Isabella scolded, blushing furiously. "It's true, darling, you're stunning. Absolutely sensual. Remind me to buy something red when we go shopping together. Remember you promised we'd do that this week." "Oh, I've forgotten," Isabella exclaimed. "You should have reminded me when you called on Monday." "Well, we had something far more interesting to discuss that day, didn't we? All the good news about Nico and that Donatella woman. I was so relieved. I barely slept Sunday night with worry. But Nico restored my faith in men, which frankly was useful. I won't be able to resist Matthew for much longer. Next time he asks me out, I'm going to say yes." Rosa paused, catching her breath. "Can we put the kids in daycare tomorrow after you get back? I'm sure I'll see Matthew on Friday, and if I manage to look even 10% as gorgeous as you do right now, well, The poor man might just have a heart attack. The two women burst into laughter, only to be interrupted by the sound of the doorbell. That must be Nico, Isabella murmured, her stomach churning instantly. Her mother glanced at her with concern. Forget the past, sweetheart. You're no longer a frightened kitten. Look at yourself. You're a tigress. Make him hear you roar. The bell rang again, this time more insistently. Isabella hurried to the door before the children could wake. But when she opened it, words failed her. Her husband stood in the doorway, more handsome than ever, if that was even possible. He had always looked magnificent, impeccably elegant, effortlessly commanding. But tonight, Nico had outdone himself. His dark hair was perfectly groomed, his shave fresh, his suit immaculate. He must have showered and dressed at the office. I see you went all out, Isabella murmured with a smile. That outfit is definitely brand new. I told you I'd be using every trick I knew tonight. His dark eyes gleamed as they held hers. And you look breathtaking. Did you do as I asked? She tried to appear calm, but with him looking at her that way, it was impossible. He smiled knowingly. Your expression already gave me the answer. I feel so strange, she whispered, making him laugh. Exactly how I wanted you to feel. Now shall we go, Mrs. Falcone? He offered his arm and reached for her overnight bag. And where are we going, Senor Falcone? On a trip to the past, with a few differences. That sounds intriguing. I just need my purse, Isabella murmured. It's in the living room, beside the beautiful roses you sent me. I put them there so I could admire them all day. And I placed a wooden figurine on my desk, so I could think of you every time I looked at it. That morning, Isabella had given Nico a carved wooden statue of a woman with long flowing hair. She'd read that, on a 5th wedding anniversary, the tradition was to exchange gifts made of wood. Nico had been delighted, showering her with kisses, telling her to expect 2 things in return. The first had been the roses. The second, he was clearly saving for tonight. She had tried to guess what it could be, but with little success. Nico had never been particularly inventive with gifts, perfumes, chocolates, the usual. Just then, Rosa appeared in the hall. Well, she said, impressed. The two of you look absolutely splendid. Have a wonderful evening, my dears. And Nico? Yes, Rosa. Don't forget what I said about the wine. I won't forget. Don't worry. Mother said something to you about wine? Isabella asked in surprise as they walked toward the Alfa Romeo parked in front of the house. Smiling, Nico placed her bag in the trunk. Indeed she did, he murmured. I can't imagine what. My mother hardly knows the subject, and you, like every good Italian, are a true wine expert. Your mother is a very experienced, intelligent woman, much more perceptive than I ever gave her credit for. I must admit we should visit her more often. Good heavens, what's gotten into you? Let's just say I realize Rosa, and I have much more in common than I thought. What? Isabella laughed. A refined taste for wine? No, my dear, the love we both feel for you. He took her right hand and slowly raised it to his lips, kissing it like a Latin lover. His dark eyes never wavered from hers. Isabella had never understood why so many women adore that gesture. But as Nico's kiss lingered against her skin, her knees went weak. Heat rushed through her body, reminding her just how vulnerable she was beneath the dress, bare and more than ready for her husband. Is this your idea of making me suffer even more? She stammered. More, my love? Does that mean you were already suffering? You know I was, Isabella murmured, trying in vain to free her hand. But Nico held it firmly. Then we are two, darling, he said softly. But a little torment won't kill us. It will only make the end sweeter. Trust me. She nearly panicked when she slid into the car and the slit of her dress fell open, revealing a dangerous length of thigh. Nico smiled wickedly as he closed her door, circling the car with unhurried steps. I have to confess, I'm glad I gave up the idea of hiring a driver, he murmured as he slid behind the wheel. If I had to sit in the back of a limousine, staring at you, well, I doubt I'd manage to keep my self-control. At least this way, I can grip the wheel and keep my focus on the road. Isabella decided small talk might calm them both. She had never felt so restless in her life. So, I suppose I'm finally going to find out the big secret, am I not? She asked in a casual tone. Nico shrugged. There's no reason to keep it secret any longer. I'm taking you to Majestic, back to the suite where we spent our very first night together. Oh, Nico, how romantic. His lips curved in a smile. I thought you'd like that. The place isn't the same anymore, unfortunately. They redecorated every room. I read about it in the paper over breakfast. Still, the Majestic seemed the most fitting choice. After all, it's where we also spent our wedding night. Yes, Isabella agreed, smiling again. Nico couldn't have chosen better. The hotel carried only sweet memories, only good energy. For some reason, he fell silent after that. She wondered why, until he spoke again. My love, I also read something else in today's paper. He murmured. Something I wanted to discuss with you. Really? And what was that? First, tell me this. Where do you think I bought the clothes I'm wearing tonight? Isabella blinked, then looked at him more closely. Well, the cut is definitely Italian. And I know you, Nico. You only like the very best when it comes to fashion. But honestly, I can't place the style. It's not Armani or Gucci, and it can't be Brioni either. No, I don't know. I give up. You'll have to tell me. It's Orsini. Orsini? I've never heard of that label. Is it new? Very. But it's already on the verge of collapse. What? Why? These clothes are wonderful. Lack of funds, mostly. The fashion business has been tough here in Australia, as you know. Isabella raised her brows. But I thought we were talking about an Italian brand. No, the owner is an Italo-Australian named Vince Orsini. His parents emigrated here 30 years ago. Vince was born and raised in Sydney. He studied fashion design and, with a small inheritance, opened his business in Surrey Hills a few years back. But he never had the money for proper advertising or promotion, and now his finances are in trouble. There was an article about him on the same page as the story about the Majestic. I was struck by his words, so I went to see him. Today? Isabella was stunned. Yes, today. I bought this suit this afternoon for a fraction of what I'd normally pay for something similar. And that made me realize wealthy executives all over the world would buy Vince's clothes, if only they knew about the brand. So I offered him a deal. I plan to finance him, and we'll become partners. The news left Isabella speechless. But Nico, fashion has nothing to do with your family's business. His smile carried a quiet determination. You don't think I could succeed? I think you could succeed at anything you set your mind to. That's the answer I was hoping for, he murmured, his smile widening. I've worked for my father long enough. Isabella, I have more than enough money to start something of my own. Besides, I inherited a substantial sum from my grandmother when I was 25, and I invested it well. What will your father say about this? Nico shrugged. I have to stand on my own feet. If he wants, I'll still keep an eye on the family business and handle the major issues, of course. But I want more. I want something challenging. I know what you mean, she whispered. It's never good to feel bored with your own work. His gaze turned thoughtful. Which brings me to my second idea. What idea? I want you to help me with this project. Isabella couldn't have been more surprised or more pleased. She'd been wanting to return to work for some time. In what way? In every way. Vince also designs women's clothing. With your keen eye for style and your intelligence, you'd be perfect to run the women's line, while I oversee the men's. I pictured us staging annual shows in Milan to launch the new collections. I have many connections in Europe. You speak Italian like a native, so there won't be any problems. And of course, we also have to think about Tokyo. Tokyo? Yes. They're crazy about fashion there, though the big houses still neglect that market. I'm convinced Orsini could become a huge success in Asia. And I haven't forgotten that you also speak Japanese. My Japanese is a little rusty. That's just lack of practice, my love. You've always had a gift for languages. So, what do you think? You're taking my breath away. But do you like the idea? I love the idea. But I know exactly what you're going to say. But don't worry about the children. You won't need to work full-time at first. A lot can be done from home, with the right equipment. And of course, we'll need extra help around the house. So this afternoon I called Italy and asked Carla if she'd like to come work for us here in Australia. Isabella could hardly believe Nico had done all that in a single day, but it made sense. It wasn't just a new suit that made him look transformed. He truly seemed more alive, energized, and full of purpose. "And what did Carla say?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Who could ever say no to Nico Falcone? He smiled. "Carla can't wait. She said she'd be ready to catch the next plane." But where would she stay? I realize we'll need more space. But Rome wasn't built in a day, Isabella, and this project won't grow overnight either. Vin still has to honor contracts he's already signed, so I told Carla she doesn't need to come for another 3 months. In the meantime, I hired a contractor to build a guest suite above the garage. They said it'll be finished in 2 months. Perfect timing. Everything will be ready when Carla arrives. Good Lord, Nico, it sounds like you really had a full day. You don't know the half of it. Damn this traffic. I booked a table for 8:30, but at this rate we'll be late. Let's forget the fancy dinner, Nico. If we're really hungry, we can always order something in the room. You truly don't mind? All I want tonight, Nico, Isabella whispered, leaning closer to kiss him, is to be with you. She was grateful the traffic light turned green just then. Otherwise, Nico might have wanted to get far more intimate with her right there, in the middle of the avenue, and she wasn't sure she would have protested. Isabella could already see their destination a few blocks ahead, rising tall and majestic against the skyline. Not as high as the Centerpoint Tower, perhaps, but still imposing. The Majestic was a striking structure of glass and concrete, modern in both design and construction. She couldn't imagine why the hotel owners had felt the need to replace all the furniture in the rooms. Perhaps the constant use had simply worn everything down. Finally, Nico murmured as he pulled into the hotel's underground parking. After shutting off the engine, he stepped out and adjusted his jacket before handing the keys to the valet in his usual effortless way. Meanwhile, another attendant had already opened Isabella's door and was about to help her out until Nico stepped in. "I'll do that," he said firmly, instructing the young man to take the luggage straight to their suite. "Falcone," he added, before turning his attention back to Isabella. Whenever they went out, Nico treated her like royalty, and tonight was no different, except that Isabella felt less like a queen and more like a movie star. Confirming her suspicion, several men passing by seemed unable to keep their eyes off her. "I'm glad you agreed to go straight to the room," Nico whispered as he guided her toward the revolving doors. "I don't like the thought of other men staring at you all night. Tonight, I want my eyes to be the only ones admiring you, my love, and for the rest of our lives." Despite the hint of jealousy in his tone, Isabella was flattered. For tonight, she could forgive him. This wasn't reality, not really, though Nico had promised it would be. He was recreating a romantic fantasy, the circumstances under which they had first met. Back then, it had been wonderful, but now Isabella wanted more. She wanted a true partnership with her husband in every part of life. She wanted to be Nico's best friend as well as his wife, his partner in business and in love. She wanted intimacy of the heart, not just the body. Those changes, however, wouldn't come overnight. Tonight wasn't the moment to dwell on them. Tonight, she would be generous. Tonight, she would give herself fully. Waiting in the grand lobby while Nico checked him in, Isabella tried not to notice how the attractive blonde receptionist leaned forward, openly flirting with her husband. The woman was stunning, and Nico was taking longer than necessary. Isabella's jealousy flared, her hand tightening around the strap of her purse. She was on the verge of snapping when a well-dressed man suddenly appeared at her side, using the oldest line in the book. "Haven't I seen you somewhere before?" She dismissed him with a frosty look, just as Nico returned. With eyebrows raised, he strode quickly over, took her firmly by the shoulder, and steered her toward the elevators. "I leave you alone for 1 minute, and the dogs start sniffing around," he grumbled. "Really?" she shot back. "Well, you'll have to learn to live with that, Nico, if you want me dressing like this. I have to live with women throwing themselves at you constantly. The moment you walk into a room, they act hypnotized." Nico blinked in surprise at her boldness. Isabella, however, stood her ground, angry and unrepentant. Then his lips curved into a slow smile. Your mother was right. I had no idea who I was marrying, but I'm finding out now. Come on, Tigress, he whispered hoarsely. Save your claws. I'll show you a better use of them soon enough. Unfortunately, other guests were inside the elevator, so Isabella couldn't ask what exactly her mother had said to him. Likely Rosa had warned Nico that things would be different from now on, and that he'd better be ready for it. Or else. Why are you smiling like that? Nico asked as he opened the door to their suite, the same room where they'd once shared so many unforgettable moments. Isabella gave him a sly, confident look. Oh, you'll find out. Later, of course. His dark eyes gleamed. He might have pulled her into his arms right there, if not for the uniformed waiter arriving at that very moment with a cart. Room service for Mr. Falcone. Wow, Isabella exclaimed. That was fast. I'll say, Nico replied smoothly, handing the young man a crisp $100 note. No need to bring it inside. We'll take it from here. The boy's eyes went wide. Thank you, sir. If you need anything at all, don't hesitate to call. Whistling, he disappeared down the hall. You gave him a $100 tip? Isabella gasped. Nobody tipped like that in Sydney. It's amazing what a little financial motivation can do. The front desk warned me there was a half-hour delay on room service, so I phoned the kitchen myself. I told them there'd be a $100 bill waiting if someone delivered our meal in 5 minutes. Not much cooking required. I ordered seafood, salad, champagne, and strawberries. Opening the door, Nico gestured for her to step inside. So, basically, Isabella teased, following him in, you agree with your father's philosophy. And what philosophy is that? Nico asked, parking the cart by the small bar. That money can buy anything. Money can buy almost anything, Isabella, but not the intangible love, talent, happiness. Still, it does let us enjoy the finer things, like excellent food and the best French champagne. She glanced back and saw that Nico had already uncovered the trays, revealing a lavish spread, and not one but 2 bottles of champagne chilling in silver ice buckets. Champagne had always been her weakness. Ever since a family friend had gifted her a bottle for her 18th birthday. She had nearly finished it herself, laughing and carefree all night. And so had her boyfriend at the time. She remembered with a sly smile. Are you sure you didn't order too much champagne, Nico? She teased, walking toward him. Because when I'm with you, my limit is just 2 glasses. Nico sighed softly. About that? Yes. I'm sorry I ever tried to interfere with what, or how much, you drink. I was wrong. My only excuse is, I noticed how uninhibited you became after a few glasses, and I have to admit, I got jealous. But I promise, I won't be that foolish again. His unexpected humility took her breath away. What exactly did my mother say to you? She asked. What she should have told me years ago. Something I should have realized myself. I want our marriage to be happy. Isabella, I don't want to repress you or control you. I thought I was protecting you, but I see now I was doing it the wrong way. I picked up some bad habits from my father, who has very old-fashioned ideas about marriage. Honestly, I hadn't realized you weren't truly happy until last week. Isabella exhaled deeply. Part of it is my fault, Nico. I should have spoken up about my needs sooner. Instead, I stayed silent, thinking I was protecting us. I said yes to everything you wanted, even when I wasn't happy. I pretended. I could tell when you weren't sincere, he said quietly, and I hated it. From now on, I want you to say no whenever you feel it. Please, don't ever pretend again. She covered her eyes quickly, brushing away the tears threatening to fall. Tonight wasn't meant for tears. I promise, Nico. From now on, you were afraid you'd end up like your mother, he added gently. Yes, I know. She told me. We had a long talk today. She made me aware of other things, too. For a second, Isabella froze. Terrified Rosa might have told him about Donatella, about Milan, about her suspicions of betrayal. Like what? She whispered. The children's names. I ignored all of your suggestions, and I'm sorry. I was selfish. It's far too late to change them now, but... Yes, of course it is. Isabella said quickly, relief washing through her. But your apology, it means a lot, Nico. More than you know. Still, let's not be serious tonight. Tonight, we should celebrate. Why don't you open one of those bottles so we can toast? Nico's expression softened with gratitude. You are a wonderful woman, Isabella, he said as he popped the cork and poured the chilled liquid into 2 crystal flutes. Handing her one, he raised his glass with a smile. To us. To us? She echoed, before they drank deeply. They ate, they drank, they laughed, emptying the first bottle, then moving on to the second. Music filled the suite, soft and romantic, while they lounged together on a leather sofa. Isabella's head began to spin, perhaps from the champagne, or perhaps from the sheer happiness she hadn't felt in so long. She felt beautiful, desired, alive. After savoring one last strawberry, Nico suddenly stood. I think now is the perfect time for your gift. Oh heavens, I'd forgotten about that. For shame, he teased. Now stand by the window. Face the bay. Close your eyes. Isabella swallowed hard, but obeyed. The tension wound tighter with every heartbeat. She could hear nothing but the music. What was he doing? What was the gift? Then she felt his warm breath on her neck, and something cool and metallic brush against her skin. Opening her eyes, she saw in the reflection of the window a magnificent necklace of shimmering rubies. Oh, Nico, she gasped. He cupped her face and kissed her tenderly. I told you, Isabella, nothing tonight will be false. This necklace is a family treasure, just as you are to me. Tears stung her eyes. But Nico, it must be far too precious. No more precious than our love, he whispered with a smile. Overwhelmed, Isabella let the music, the view of the bay, and her husband's embrace wash over her completely. I love you, Nico, she murmured. And I love you, Isabella. Only you, always you, he said, holding her tightly. Now this is life, Isabella murmured, settling deeper into the bathtub. Both she and Nico were sipping champagne. He had ordered another bottle, and, just like before, room service had been exceptionally fast. The bathroom was pure luxury, all clad in black marble, elegant and decadent at the same time. Isabella realized she had never been in a bath with Nico before, not even before their marriage. It was delightful, relaxing, yet incredibly exciting. For now, only their feet touched beneath the water. They couldn't really see each other's bodies, but the thought of being completely naked under all that foam was thrilling enough. I should do this more often, Nico said suddenly. Do it more often? She asked, her blue eyes shining with curiosity. Find someone to watch the children at night, and whisk you away somewhere private and romantic. A whole night together, just the 2 of us. Promises, promises. It's 10 o'clock, and you've only shared one special moment with me so far. My dear wife, I started seducing you the moment I called this morning and told you not to wear lingerie. You were excited all day long, Mrs. Falcone. Why don't you admit it? And what about you, Senor Falcone? She teased, refusing to give him the satisfaction. Were you excited all day, too, thinking about all this? I deliberately distracted myself with work. But even then, I had to take an ice-cold shower before picking you up. I couldn't risk disappointing you. Not tonight. Not on our anniversary. She smiled softly. You never disappoint me, Nico. Really? And what about all those times you pretended with me last year? Isabella shrugged. I just wasn't in the mood. I don't know why, maybe exhaustion. Honestly, I doubt even Mel Gibson could have turned me on those nights. Perhaps I didn't try hard enough, Nico admitted quietly. But I think you were more dissatisfied than tired. I was selfish, insensitive, and I'm sorry, Isabella. Things will be better from now on. A satisfied sigh escaped Isabella's lips. If tonight was any indication, the future looked very bright indeed. Oh, it's gone already. Nico complained, lifting the empty champagne bottle from the ice bucket, his dark eyes glinting with mischief. Should I order another before we begin the next round? No, not unless you want to make love to a sleeping woman. Heaven forbid. In that case, I'll order coffee. A whole pot just for you. I've no intention of letting the night end early, tigress. You look far too beautiful right now. in that tub, hair undone, with that ruby necklace on your delicious neck. Good Lord, she gasped, suddenly realizing she was still wearing the necklace. Hastily, she set her glass aside and reached up with wet hands. No! Don't take it off, Nico protested. You look stunning. A little soap and water won't harm a real jewel. You're sure? Oh, then all right. You're probably right. She touched the gems reverently. I've never owned anything so beautiful before or so expensive. I adore it, Nico. It's the perfect anniversary gift. Yes, I thought it would be, he said, his eyes warm and loving. And giving it to you tonight worked out very well indeed. She was about to relax again when a darker thought crept in. Nico was not a man who forgot things. His memory was exceptional. So why hadn't he given her the necklace earlier? Could it have anything to do with Donatella? Her stomach tightened at the unpleasant idea. Nico, she began, suddenly determined to dig deeper into his feelings about Donatella. Had he really moved on? What did he think of her now that Enrico was gone? Did he still hate her or pity her? Part of Isabella longed to ask what, exactly, he had been doing in Donatella's apartment that day, but she dared not. Admitting that would mean confessing she had followed him, and then she'd have to reveal that his mother had told her far more than she'd admitted hearing. Yes? What is it? Nico asked. Isabella swallowed hard. You said there would be no more secrets between us. Why, yes. Suddenly, he sounded hesitant. Her courage faltered. Why ruin such a perfect night? What more could she want from this man? He had told her he loved her, only her, always her. What more needed to be said? Isabella? What do you want to know? Nico pressed. Come on, you can't back out now. Oh, yes, she could and she would. She just needed something plausible to say instead. Why did you never ask about the boyfriends I had before you? She improvised. His eyebrows shot up and then he laughed. I chose to remain pleasantly ignorant. Besides, I wasn't sure I'd have enough time in my life to hear all the stories. You... Isabella straightened indignantly, leaning forward. You know there weren't that many, and you know none of them meant a thing until I met you. Perfect, he murmured, reaching out to draw her into his arms. As she landed in his lap, Isabella felt just how aroused Nico already was. Oh, you're impossible. His smile was wicked. My love, you have no idea how impossible. We'll see who lasts longer this time. She challenged, loosening her hair and letting the golden waves tumble down over her shoulders like a waterfall. Nico stared at her in fascination. Then a smile curved his lips again. Loser makes a coffee, he suggested softly. Isabella ignored the irony. This time, she would surprise him. This time, she would take control. Besides, so far she felt more satisfied than he had. There was no way she would hurry things tonight. Oh, yes, she would win this game, without question. You look positively radiant. Those were her mother's first words the next morning, after Nico had left for work. Would you like some coffee? Isabella whispered. Heavens, no. Enough coffee already. I think I'm on the verge of a caffeine overdose. How was last night? May I even ask? Nico certainly looked very happy when you two came back. That man, does he ever sleep? And does he ever lose a bet? Rosa gave her a curious look. So, everything went well, I suppose. At least for Nico. For me, too. I won't pretend otherwise. I loved it. I'm just exhausted. Oh, I wish I could feel that kind of exhaustion one of these days. Rose exclaimed. Isabella had to laugh. Did the children give you any trouble? Not at all. Are you sure? Positively. They were angels. And now, do you still have the energy to go shopping with me? Be honest. Why not? No matter how tired I am, I won't sleep after all that coffee. I can rest this afternoon once we're back, while the children nap. She forced herself to stay cheerful through the morning. It was wonderful to see happiness back on her mother's face. And despite all her experience, Rosa was like a giddy girl when choosing outfits, clearly not willing to risk disappointing Matthew on their first date. You really know a lot about fashion, Rosa said later, as they enjoyed a light snack back at Isabella's house. I'm not at all surprised Nico invited you into his new venture. I think you'll be brilliant. People may say I'm biased. After all, you're my daughter, but I've always known how smart you are. That's why I nearly lost my mind when you dropped out of law school to work as a hotel receptionist. Mother, don't be a snob again. Dealing with the public is also noble work. It takes talent and tact, at least if you want to do it right. Mateo, for heaven's sake, stop pestering poor Tico and go play in the yard. Take Lucia with you. But I don't want to go, the boy grumbled. Do as I say, she ordered firmly, or you'll stay in your room until your father comes home. At the threat of punishment, Mateo's eyes narrowed. Isabella could almost see him weighing the pros and cons, deciding whether or not to obey. Come on, Lucia, he muttered at last, grabbing his sister's hand. Mom's in a bad mood. He sighed like an old man and walked out. Isabella shook her head. Sometimes I think Mateo is far too clever for his age. He's a darling, Rosa said with a laugh. But he'll be a handful when he grows up. Girls will chase him like crazy. You can bet on it. I already have that problem with his father. You should have seen the way the hotel receptionist threw herself at him last night, just like he did 5 years ago. Rosa teased. Yes, well, that was different. How so? He wasn't a married man then. Single girls these days have no respect for married men. It reminded me of something, Mother. Your, almost boyfriend. Matthew? Yes, Matthew. He isn't married, is he? No. Divorced like me. How many times? I didn't ask. I thought you would. No, Isabella. I won't. I'll accept him as he is. And I expect he'll accept me the same way. But sometimes the past matters. You're talking about Nico and Donatella? Good Lord, girl, don't tell me you're still worried about that. Well, yes, a little. Then stop. Right now. Nico loves you. You should have heard him on the phone yesterday, asking me what more he could do to make you happy. That man wouldn't look at another woman. Not a chance. Isabella drew a long, slow breath. I suppose you're right. I know I am. You've certainly changed your opinion about Nico. An intelligent woman has a right to change her mind whenever she pleases, don't you think? Perhaps, but that doesn't happen often in your case. I'd only be more surprised if you told me you plan to marry again. Now that's going too far. I might want a relationship, a little real companionship. But marriage? Absolutely not. Not for me. I'm not that foolish anymore. You mean like me? Isabella teased. Of course not. But I have to be honest, Isabella. Men like Nico aren't easy to find. Isabella wasn't sure she liked hearing her mother praise Nico so much. He was not perfect. Far from it. She almost felt relieved to see him slightly disheveled when he came home that evening. It would be unbearable to be married to a flawless Superman. I don't know how I made it through work today, Nico admitted as he walked in. I had to see Vince again, as I promised him, but my body and my brain refused to function. In the end, we agreed to meet again over the weekend. I invited him for dinner on Saturday. Is that all right with you? Perfectly all right. She agreed at once. That night, Isabella went to bed with a sense of hope. Her mother was right. It was foolish to keep worrying about Donatella. She, Isabella, was the one Nico loved. Donatella belonged to the past, not the present. Vince had spent nearly the entire Saturday at their house, arriving around 2 o'clock and only leaving after dinner. Isabella liked him from the moment he walked through the door. Though short and slender, he was good-looking and charming, with neatly cut blonde hair and large blue eyes. His sharp wit and quick humor captured everyone's attention, making Isabella laugh with his stories about the fashion world. He was also kind to the children, reading them bedtime stories while Isabella prepared dinner. It wasn't until the next day that Isabella realized how discreet Nico had been, giving her space to talk to Vince almost the entire time. Touched by such a generous gesture, she mentioned it to her husband as soon as he woke up on Sunday morning. "You don't need to thank me," Nico murmured, yawning and stretching. "I enjoyed watching you two talk. You and Vince will make a great team. I can already see it. I know my investment is in good hands." He smiled and pulled her closer. "So you weren't jealous?" Isabella asked, raising her brows. "I trust you, Isabella," he replied firmly. "But I'll admit, I don't trust other men so easily." "But you're one of them," she teased. "Exactly," he said with a faint smile. "I know how a man's mind works. If I were a stranger, I couldn't resist you either. Nico, you can't be serious." "I've never been more serious in my life." He held her tenderly. "Now, come here and kiss me. It's Sunday and I don't have to work." "Oh, really?" "Well, I do," Isabella replied, pushing back the sheets and getting up to see why little Lucia was crying. By Monday morning, Isabella was still replaying Nico's words in her mind, sitting in one of the chairs at the daycare center where she planned to enroll the children. Had he truly meant it? Would he really try to seduce her even if she were married? Was Nico that kind of man, impulsive, without limits? She hated the thought, absolutely hated it, and she was still brooding when she returned home around noon. She felt unwell, had no appetite, and didn't even bother to check the mailbox. It hardly mattered anyway. What else would she find besides bills and advertisements? She fed the children and put them down for their afternoon nap, then sat in the living room, flipping on the television to a soap opera she wasn't even interested in. Bad choice. The characters' lives were nothing but drama, filled with lies, betrayals, arguments, and heartbreak. Isabella had always longed for a peaceful, stable life. She couldn't stand constant conflict or confrontation. She quickly turned the TV off and was about to start dinner when she heard the faint ring of the phone. She always lowered the volume during nap time, and she hurried to answer the kitchen extension. "Yes?" she said, sitting at the breakfast table. "Isabella, it's Nico. Listen, something terrible has happened back home, and I have to fly to Italy immediately." Instantly, Isabella thought of Nico's father, who had a weak heart. "Was it your father? Did he have another heart attack?" "No, thank God," Nico replied. "When I said back home, I meant Italy, not the Falcone Villa. It's Donatella. She tried to kill herself. She overdosed on sleeping pills." Isabella's head began to spin. But why?" she stammered nervously. "I mean," Nico sighed, "if you want my honest opinion, I don't think she can cope with the loss. Truth is, I've been worried something like this might happen. Could you pack a bag for me, Isabella? Just enough for 2 or 3 days. I managed to book the last seat on a flight to Rome, and from there I'll connect to Milan." Trying to stay calm, Isabella drew in a breath, though inside she felt shattered. "But, Nico, why do you have to go? What about Donatella's family?" "She doesn't have any." "And what about your parents? They're only an hour from Milan. They could help." "They can't know about this, Isabella. The shock would probably kill my father." "But why?" "I can understand a widow trying to take her own life, especially in Donatella's case, since she never had children. I don't see why your parents would be that shocked, Nico. Believe me, Isabella, they would be if they knew the whole truth. And I can't risk Donatella telling them. Unfortunately, I'm the only one who can help her now. Yes, it's a huge inconvenience, I know, but it's the way things are. What could Donatella possibly tell them?" "What are you talking about, Nico?" "I can't explain everything right now. There's no time. Please just pack my bag. I'll be there in 10 minutes to pick it up." And with that, he hung up. Just hung up. Isabella stared at the phone in disbelief. Her husband was throwing everything aside, flying across the world, to be at the side of a woman he claimed he no longer loved. It was unbelievable, unthinkable, intolerable. She packed his bag slowly, trying to think of something, anything, to stop him from going. By the time she was standing at the front gate, the suitcase at her feet, Nico pulled up and jumped out of the car. "I'm sorry about all this," he said, kissing her cheek while grabbing the luggage. "I'll be back Friday. I've already called everyone I had appointments with, told them an emergency would keep me away for a few days. If my mother or father call, make up some excuse about why I'm not here. Tell them I'm away on business with Vince. Tell them anything, but they mustn't know the truth, Isabella. Promise me." I promise." "Good girl. And don't worry so much. I'll explain everything when I'm back. There's no time now. If I lose even a few minutes, I'll miss the flight." She followed him to the car door. You'll call me when you get there, won't you, Nico? What? He asked distractedly, tossing the suitcase onto the back seat before sliding behind the wheel. Oh, yes, of course I will. Then you can explain everything, she said sharply, making him turn his head. You're not still worried about me and Donatella, are you? I can see that you are, but you don't need to be. Querida, she's the last woman on earth I'd ever touch. I really am sorry, but I have to go or I'll miss my flight. I love you. He shut the door, lowered the window. I'll call as soon as I can to tell you the whole story. Isabella stood watching the car disappear down the road, her chest tightening. She wanted to trust him. God, she really wanted to. Nico had sounded so sincere, and he had said he loved her. He had been saying it often lately, but regret gnawed at her all afternoon. Regret for not pressing him harder, for not demanding every detail about his engagement to Donatella and why it had ended. Only after tea time did Isabella finally start going through the morning mail. The first envelope was a phone bill, and the amount stunned her, far higher than it should have been, considering they'd spent 3 weeks in Italy the month before. Almost automatically, her eyes scanned the list of calls until they froze. 2 international calls, made on the same day, one more expensive than the other. The first had been to Nico's parents. On the very Sunday, they'd returned to Australia, a full 60 minutes long. The second call had been to a number in Milan, a number Isabella didn't recognize, and that one had lasted nearly 2 hours. The bill showed it had started at 2:05 that very Sunday afternoon and ended close to 4 o'clock, the exact time Isabella had returned home from visiting her mother. Her heart pounded as she stared at the digits. She knew it wasn't the Milan office number. That one she knew by heart. Almost without hope, she walked to the small table where they kept the address book, pulled open the drawer, and flipped to the letter P. Her hand trembled as she traced down to Enrico Falcone's old Milan address. The number matched. It was Donatella's. Nico had called her and spoken for 2 whole hours, while Isabella had been out of the house. Tears burst from her eyes. How could he? The traitor, the liar, the miserable bastard. Sobbing, she opened the second envelope, this one addressed directly to Nico. It was another phone bill, this time for his mobile, the one he carried everywhere. Through blurred vision, shoulders shaking, she searched the log for the same number. And there it was, not once, but 3 times. Granted, they weren't long conversations, just a few minutes each. But one of them hit her like a thunderbolt. It had been placed on Wednesday night, at 7:15. The exact time Nico should have been getting ready for their anniversary celebration. Yet he'd found the time to call Donatella. Her husband was a liar, an adulterer, a bastard. He had deliberately seduced Donatella, perhaps out of revenge. And now he was carrying on a long-distance affair, soothing his foolish wife with the same weapons he'd used on Donatella. Lies and intimacy. Isabella didn't believe for a single moment that Donatella had truly tried to kill herself. No, it was nothing but a ploy to lure Nico back, to make him give her what she craved. Nico in her bed. Nico telling her he had to return to his wife for the sake of the children, but that it was Donatella he truly loved. Her, always her. Exactly as Nico's mother had once said. Isabella's despair hardened into fury. This time, she wouldn't look away. She wouldn't stay silent like some frightened kitten. She wouldn't roll in bed and sob into her pillow like the naive fool she'd been the Wednesday before. Grinding her teeth, she pulled the travel agency's number from the book and dialed. The direct Rome flight for the next day was already full, but she could leave in the morning, connect through Zurich, and be in Milan less than 24 hours after Nico. Of course, that depended on her mother agreeing to stay with the children. It was a huge favor to ask, but this was a true emergency. Of course I'll take care of them, Rosa said firmly after hearing the whole story. I'll take the rest of the week off. No need to drag the kids over here. I'll pack a bag and stay in your house. They'll feel more at ease in their own home. Oh, Mother, thank you. I'll never be able to repay you for this. Nonsense. What else are mothers for? But, Isabella, don't jump to conclusions. Only God knows what's really happening between Nico and that woman. I agree you can't just sit back and do nothing, but I still don't believe Nico betrayed you. The more I think about it, the more I see him as a man being manipulated by a clever, dangerous woman. She left Nico for Enrico when it suited her, because Enrico was older, perhaps wealthier, and now that he's dead, she's circling back to Nico. Isabella blinked, shaken. She had never thought of Donatella that way. She had always pictured her as weak, fragile, without will of her own. But maybe her mother was right. Maybe beneath that mask Donatella was very different, playing the helpless victim to trap whatever man she wanted, like a hunter laying a silent snare. Maybe you're right, Mother, Isabella said coldly, but I won't rest until I know for sure. Oh, and one more thing. When Nico calls tomorrow morning, don't tell him I'm gone. Tell him I'm sick, that you're looking after me, and I can't come to the phone. Tell him I'm in bed, asleep. Suggest he call again in the evening. By then I'll already be there, and the bastard will wish he'd never been born. Oh, Isabella, I hate seeing you so bitter. There are times in life when bitterness is necessary, Mother. Now I'll go pack my things. I'll see you later. Isabella glanced down at the black outfit she wore and wondered if, unconsciously, she had dressed in mourning. The rage that fueled her through the flight to Zurich had drained away as soon as she landed. By the time she boarded the connecting plane to Milan, she was cold, but stepping off into Italian air, reality struck her with brutal force. Her husband didn't love her. He had abandoned her. Their marriage was almost certainly over. In the back of a taxi bound for Donatella's apartment, a strange surge of pride swept through her. If she was to lose her husband to another woman, she would lose him fighting. Her honor demanded nothing less. And yet, faint though it was, hope flickered. Perhaps her mother was right. Perhaps Donatella was a true villain. The doorman recognized her immediately and let her pass without question, without even calling upstairs to check. Good. Isabella didn't want those two to have time to tidy themselves, to straighten the apartment or the bed. Donatella had never kept permanent staff, despite Enrico's fortune. She once confessed she hated the feeling of being watched, preferring day help only. No servants lived in the house. My husband is here, isn't he? Isabella asked in soft Italian. Yes, Signor Falcone is upstairs. He has not left since his arrival yesterday, the man replied. Her stomach twisted violently at the confirmation, but she pressed on. There would be no retreat this time. The doorman offered to carry her small valise. She declined politely. She wasn't planning to stay long. By the time she reached Donatella's door, her chest was tight, her breath shallow. She raised her hand to the bell, but the door opened to a stranger, a tall, broad-shouldered woman, perhaps in her 40s, with kind eyes and a steady presence. She introduced herself as a nurse. Nico had hired her to care for Donatella after the incident, so the suicide attempt had been real, and Nico was here to help, but that did not absolve either of them. Where's my husband? Isabella asked, voice deceptively mild. Upstairs, came the reply, with Signora Donatella in her bedroom. I know the way, Isabella said quickly. No need to announce me. The apartment was palatial, marble floors and mirror columns stretching across 2 levels. Ostentatious. Decadent, just like Enrico. Her heart thundered with every step up the stairs. At the landing, she paused. The bedroom door stood ajar. From where she stood, she could see only the carved footboard of the enormous bed. If she moved just slightly to the left, she would see more, and hear more. A woman's voice drifted out, thick with emotion. You can't understand, and how could I explain? But I loved him, Domenico. You were the only man who ever showed me kindness, even when I pushed you away. But I was afraid to be with you. Afraid you would discover I was not the sweet, innocent virgin you thought I was. And then Enrico came, and he... Yes. Nico's deep voice answered heavily. Now I know, but at the time I didn't. Do you know what it felt like, walking into my brother's room and seeing you with him? Oh, Domenico, Donatella's voice cracked. Don't remind me. I was wicked, I know, but I am like this. I do what must be done, and still I am the same. I feel guilty, ashamed. Enrico barely 2 weeks gone, and already I was in bed with. She broke off, sobbing. Enough, Nico soothed. Don't torment yourself. What's done is done. It wasn't really your fault. You say that, but maybe it's me. Maybe I bring out the worst in every man. You were the only one who ever treated me with decency. Oh, God, why did I marry you when I had the chance? That was enough. Isabella burst into the room. Donatella's hand was on Nico's cheek. Nico held it, gazing at her with sad intensity. They froze as Isabella appeared in the doorway. Donatella dropped her hand instantly. Nico shot to his feet, startled, more shocked than guilty. Isabella, he exclaimed. What are you doing here? Your mother said. My mother lied. Isabella cut him off, her Italian sharp, so Donatello would hear every word. I followed you here to catch you in the act with this impostor. Isabella, you've misunderstood, Nico stammered, panic on his face. Don't you dare treat me like a fool, she spat. Her voice was ice, though inside she was nothing but ashes. Do you remember the day of my migraine? I didn't go to bed. I drove here. I sat outside this very building. I vomited when I saw your car. My husband's car. Not at the office. But here, with her. Donatello whimpered and buried her face in the pillow. Nico reached for her. What on earth makes you think? You didn't even bother to deny it. Isabella snapped with scorn. I heard your mother say more than I admitted. She feared you were still in love with your old fiancé. Feared you weren't really at the office late at night. But here, with Donatella, finally taking what you'd never had before. Nico went pale. Donatella shook her head, hands to her temples. God knows how it happened, Isabella sneered. You the fool, she the deceiver. And maybe she still wants you. I could even understand that. I told myself it was a passing thing, that you didn't love her, that it was revenge, ego. So, like a blind little wife, I tried to win you back. I humiliated myself for you. And you let me grovel like an idiot. Her voice broke, then hardened again. Everyone told me to look away, even my mother, and I did, until I saw the phone bills. Nico's eyes narrowed. Phone bills. Yes, the damn calls. To her, a 2-hour call to this very apartment. And then on your cell, more calls. One of them on our anniversary night. Nico, our anniversary. Isabella, please, let me explain. No, she cut him off. You can't explain. And I wouldn't believe you if you tried. I want a divorce. And I will keep the children. Nico's jaw lifted, his black eyes flashing with resolve. You can't keep them, and we will not get divorced. Is that so? Well, we'll see about that, Isabella shot back. In case you've forgotten, my mother is a lawyer, an excellent one, I might add. She'll make sure I win custody of the children. I will not let my kids be anywhere near you and that woman. Isabella had never seen Nico tremble like that. For a long moment, he just stood there, staring at her. Finally, he spoke, his voice deep and resonant, his gaze locked on hers. Isabella, you have to listen to me. For the children's sake, if not for mine. This isn't what you think. You got it all wrong. I love you, not Donatella. I never slept with her. All I did was talk, trying to help her after Enrico died. You expect me to believe that? Then who exactly was Donatella sleeping with so soon after her husband's death? Who was it that dragged her into this? Isabella's arm shot out, pointing at the figure on the bed. Oh no, Nico, you're the one who's wrong. I don't need to hear any more lies. I'm leaving. She spun around to go, but Nico leapt in front of her before she could take 2 steps, gripping her wrist and forcing her to face him. With her free hand, Isabella slapped him hard across the face. Nico didn't react. He only swallowed, his jaw tight. Stop it, stop this. Donatella cried out, pushing herself upright in bed, her face wild and frantic. It wasn't Domenico I slept with, Isabella. The man was a complete stranger, someone I met in a bar. I brought him back here and let him do things to me in my husband's bed, things no decent woman should ever endure. Isabella froze. Her breath caught in her throat as Nico whispered, Donatella, you don't have to do this. Isabella will understand once I explain everything to her privately. No, Domenico, Donatella screamed. She needs to know it all. She needs to hear it from me. Then she'll believe you. I couldn't bear to watch you suffer because of me. Not you. You're the only good man I've ever known. A heavy silence fell. But there are bad men out there, Isabella, Donatella went on, her eyes burning with madness. Truly bad men. My father was one of them. Your father? Isabella echoed. Yes, my father, my dear father, the one I adored. When my mother died, I was only 12. That very night, after the funeral, he took me into his bed to take her place. And the next night, and every night that followed, Isabella was horrified. She'd heard of such things, but had never met anyone who had lived through it. Can you imagine a father doing that to his own daughter? Pale, Isabella could only shake her head. When I turned 16, he pulled me out of school for good, so I could be his woman full time. He was wealthy. He never needed to work if he didn't want to. So we traveled the world together, and everywhere we went, he introduced me as his daughter. But behind closed doors, I wasn't his beloved child. I was his captive, his possession. Donatella gave a twisted smile, the kind that made Isabella's blood run cold. Shocking, isn't it? But all of us crave love, even if that love is twisted and corrupt, like my father's. My mother killed herself, as you must know. Her only way to escape him. Donatella, that's enough. Nico's voice thundered, but she refused to be silenced. No, Domenico, you're always telling me to see a therapist, to talk about it. Well, I think telling your wife will help me more, because she needs to know. She has to believe you. Then at least let me close the door, Nico muttered. No one else needs to hear this. As he pushed the door shut, Isabella sat on the edge of the bed, her voice trembling. Please, go on. Nico shook his head and moved away, standing silently by the open window. Clearly, he had already heard the sordid details before and wanted no part of hearing them again. Donatella adjusted her tangled hair and sank back into the pillows, her expression resolute. As the years passed, my father's appetites grew darker. He began bringing other men home, strangers he met in bars or casinos, and he made me entertain them. One night, in Monte Carlo, the man he brought was Enrico. Isabella's eyes widened. Donatella only nodded. Yes, now you're beginning to understand. Not long after that, my father died of sudden stroke, and I inherited all his wealth. Foolishly, I thought I could start over, leave the past behind, and become a new woman, a decent woman, at least. I returned to our family home in Milan and tried to do just that. She paused, drawing in a long, shaky breath. Then one afternoon, I met Domenico by chance on the street. I'd spent the day shopping, my arms full of bags, when a dog darted in front of me and I fell. Domenico helped me up and bought me a coffee. We started seeing each other, and I thought he was wonderful. But every time he kissed me, I was terrified of going further, terrified of what I might reveal about myself. He thought I was shy, innocent, and I let him believe that. When he asked me to marry him, I said yes. But I decided to wait until our wedding night. Domenico was enough of a gentleman to accept it. Isabella's stomach churned. Nico had been so in love with Donatella that he agreed to wait for her, to respect her. He hadn't done that with her. He hadn't accepted no from Isabella even on their very first night. And now she wondered, was that true passion or just anger and frustration because he hadn't been able to have Donatella when he wanted her? When Domenico took me to the villa that weekend, after our engagement, Donatella continued, I had no idea his brother had once been one of the men my father delivered me to. Back then, no one used real names. But Enrico recognized me immediately. He made sure we were alone. I tried to pretend I didn't know what he meant, but he wouldn't let it go. He blackmailed me into his bed, and he made certain Domenico would catch us together. After Domenico ended the engagement, Enrico forced me to marry him. But you didn't have to, Isabella whispered, struggling to make sense of the woman before her. Donatella smiled again, a sad, broken smile. That's the problem. I had to. I don't even know why. Men like my father and Enrico, they seem to have this power over me. I just couldn't say no to them. Enrico told me the night we met had been the best of his life, that he had never forgotten me, and that he couldn't believe his eyes when he saw me at his parents' house, engaged to his brother. He seemed jealous, almost deranged, until he realized nothing had happened between Domenico and me. He said he would take me by force if he had to, that he didn't care who got hurt in the process. He claimed to love me, but right after our wedding, he started bringing other men into our home, just like my father had done. Donatella's shoulders slumped, her eyes fixed on the blanket. When he died, I hoped I'd finally be free of all that filth. But apparently I wasn't. As soon as I was alone, I started drinking, and then I went out and gave myself to the first man I found. It feels like I got addicted to that kind of life. Maybe I can't live without it. Maybe I even need it. Nonsense, Isabella exclaimed firmly, making the woman lift her head. You're just confused and lonely. Many women have casual encounters under those circumstances. You're not addicted to that life. You were conditioned to accept it. A good psychiatrist can help you overcome it. And later, you'll find a good man. She straightened, her tone hardening. But not my good man. At those words, Nico turned his head, his gaze locking with Isabella's. So much was said in that single look. Love and regret, forgiveness and renewed trust. Isabella had to admit Donatello was right. Hearing the truth from her lips was far better than hearing it from Nico. She would never have believed him so easily. She would have thought he was lying. But no woman would invent such a horror story, not to impress a man like Nico. Despite all his sophistication and experience, he had chosen a calm, conservative life. He hadn't cared that Isabella had lived other experiences, but Donatella's past, filled with abuse and manipulation, was something entirely different. Deep down, Isabella doubted that a psychiatrist alone could solve all of Donatello's problems. But it would be a start, at least. Perhaps a woman psychiatrist would be best. Better not to take chances. Donatello was truly beautiful, and men would always be men, even doctors. I think, Donatella, Isabella went on, that you need to check into a good clinic, where you can count on the help of a compassionate therapist. Nico and I can arrange that right away. In the meantime, I think you should take a relaxing bath and change your clothes. I'll send the nurse up to help you, all right? You're not angry with Domenico anymore? Donatella asked anxiously. Not now. Not after you explain the whole truth. He loves you, the other woman whispered. Not me. How could Domenico love me after what I did to him? But you and the children, you're everything to him. That's what he told me this morning. He seemed so unhappy when he called home, and your mother told him you were in bed. Too ill to take the phone. You were really worried, weren't you, Domenico? Isabella looked at her husband, who nodded slowly. Yes, Donatella. Yes, I was very worried. His eyes found Isabella's, and the sincerity in his expression was undeniable. Realizing how close they had come to disaster, Isabella felt tears sting her eyes, but she fought them back. The last thing Donatella needed right then was to see someone else collapse in sobs. Well, now you don't have to worry anymore, she said brusquely. I'm here and I believe your story. I believe both of you. She turned again to Donatella. Now Nico and I will go downstairs to call the nurse. My God, you were incredible up there. Nico told her once he had sent the nurse to Donatella's room. The two of them were in the vast living room. Nico standing at the bar pouring himself a glass of whiskey. Isabella sitting on one of the brocade sofas by the marble fireplace. She chose not to drink, her stomach still unsettled after everything that had happened. So sensitive and yet so strong, Nico continued. I had tried every way I could to get Donatella to see a doctor, and you managed it in 5 seconds. And not just a doctor. You convinced her to check into a clinic. No less. Now I realize I should have asked for your help from the beginning. He smiled, and finally Isabella's self-control crumbled. Tears slid down her face. She had forgiven Nico in her mind, but her heart was still wounded and raw. Yes, you should have. Nico, she whispered bitterly. You should have told me about Donatella from the start. And you should have told me you loved me a long, long time ago. With a strangled sigh, she covered her face, trying to dry the tears. A few seconds passed before Nico sat beside her, wrapping her in a warm, loving embrace, soothing her with soft words of apology. "Yes, I should have," he admitted, "and I'm sorry I didn't. My only excuse is that I'm a man, Isabella, a typical Italian man, proud and stubborn. When I came to Sydney, my ego was crushed. At the time, I knew nothing about Enrico's or Donatella's past, and I felt betrayed by both of them. It's not something I'm proud to admit, I assure you. But then suddenly, I was staring into the most beautiful blue eyes in the world, yours, and they were locked on mine, sending me a very clear message. And I did what any man in my position would have done. You seduced me." She sobbed against his chest. "Ah, Isabella, who's being dishonest now. I never seduced you. You know you wanted me just as much as I wanted you." Isabella thought about it for a few moments, then composed herself. When she looked back at Nico, a shy smile curved her full lips. "It's true. I fell in love with you at first sight, and it took me a whole week to realize the same thing. Amore mio." No, that's not a lie," he insisted, holding Isabella's face in his hands, forcing her to look at him. "I admit that, at the beginning, I wasn't able to recognize my love for you. I was still too wounded to understand my own feelings. And I still thought I might be in love with Donatella." Oh, her heart skipped a beat, her eyes widening at the thought that they had made love, while Nico still thought of Donatella. "Hey, I said I thought I was. The truth is, I was never really in love with Donatella. How could I have been when I went months without the slightest intimacy with her? Do you think I would have been that patient with you, even if you had been a virgin? I've told you before, I simply had to have you, not out of lust, but out of love." Those passionate words stirred Isabella. Now she recognized in Nico the man she had fallen in love with, a hot-blooded Milanese, with magnetic eyes and surprising fire. By the time we married, I discovered that the passion I once thought I felt for Donatella was nothing compared to what I felt for you, he declared with fervor. "When you gave birth to Matteo and I saw you suffering through all that pain, I would have given my own life to ease your agony. And when the nurses placed our son in your arms and you smiled at him, I was speechless with the love I felt for you both." Nico paused, breathing deeply, encouraged by her gentle gaze. "And of course, I can't forget my greatest failing, my inability to say those 3 little words. I love you. I love you." He kissed her lips after each word. "I don't know why it used to be so hard for me. Maybe it's just a man's flaw. We men are strange creatures. But I always felt it deep inside my chest, and I try to show it in other ways. Remember how I could hardly wait to take you to Lake Como, to introduce you to my parents, right after Matteo was born? And then, seeing you there, kind and wonderful with everyone as always, I loved you even more. I couldn't keep my hands off you, remember?" Isabella's heart tightened. "Yes, I remember. But to be honest, Nico, after I overheard your mother, I started thinking your appetite for me had come back, because you were close to Donatella, unable to have her. And this last time, when you stopped seeking me out, I thought it was because you were getting closer to her." Nico looked truly pained, his hands dropping away from her face. "Oh, my God! Oh, Isabella, I swear that had nothing to do with Donatella. I was just exhausted, that's all. Stressed and worried that Enrico's death would turn my whole life upside down. I was afraid my father would ask me to return to Italy. That's why I worked like a dog to make sure everything was finished before we went back to Australia. The day you saw my car, here was the only time I came to Donatella's apartment. She had called the office in the middle of the breakdown, threatening to tell my parents everything. I had no idea what she meant, but she was so hysterical I thought it best to come. That's when Donatella told me her painful story, every sordid detail. And I knew I had to spare my parents from the truth, especially my father. Enrico had always been his favorite. It would have been a crushing blow for Antonio to learn that his beloved son had lived such a shameful life. And I didn't tell you because I was ashamed of my own brother. A sigh of relief escaped Isabella's lips. That's how it all happened. Isabella, I swear on everything sacred. My mother had no reason to suspect me. I can't understand why she said such nonsense. Maybe she wouldn't have thought that if you had told her, at least once, that you no longer had any feeling for Donatella. Still, in hindsight, overhearing Alba's suspicions wasn't a complete disaster. It woke me up. It made me stop pretending I was someone I wasn't. It made me reevaluate our marriage, to see that things weren't as perfect as I imagined. I thought our marriage was perfect. Was it, Nico? Was it really? Most of the time. Yes. Maybe not when you were pretending in bed. Nico gave a serious smile. But things certainly improved once you started believing I was unfaithful. So maybe I should even be grateful to my mother. Ironic, isn't it? That night, after hearing Donatella's dreadful story, I came home desperate to feel your arms around me, only to be told you had been unwell all day. And then, when I saw you lying there, so beautiful, I had to run for a cold shower, the only way to contain my desire. And finally, when I climbed into bed and you began to touch me, I could hardly believe what was happening. I couldn't believe what I was feeling, either. Isabella admitted hoarsely. Nico's expression grew grave. You mean? She nodded. Yes. I was out of my mind with anger. I swear, I didn't even know what I was doing. A strange gleam lit his eyes. Then I think you should go mad with rage more often. Tell me something, Nico. Anything, he said sincerely. You never really forgot about that necklace, did you? Nico sighed. No, not entirely. He leaned forward, setting his glass down on the coffee table, taking a deep breath before continuing. I had meant to give that necklace to Donatella on our wedding day, but when we broke off engagement, I couldn't even bear to look at it, so I locked it away and forgot it existed. It was my mother who returned it to me the morning we flew back to Sydney with the children, saying it was time I gave it to you. I wish I'd thought of it myself. Remember, I had no idea what my mother had said about me and Donatella, or what was going through your mind. To me, the necklace was just a token of love. That's all. And you know us men, we'd rather show our love than talk about it. A long pause followed. Then, after another sip of whiskey, Nico took her hands, stroking her fingers lightly. And that's what I've been trying to do lately, show you how much I love you. I'm sorry if you ever felt humiliated by something I asked of you or by anything I did. I'll never ask you again to do something like what you did on our anniversary. I promise. Oh, she murmured, secretly disappointed. Unless, of course, you want to, Nico added, smiling mischievously. You're incorrigible, and you're incredibly beautiful. Raising his hand, he caressed her cheek with his fingertips, making Isabella's heart race. Hold me, Nico, she whispered. Just hold me. His strong arms wrapped around her, giving her strength and safety. Isabella leaned her head on Nico's chest with a sigh of relief. She could hear her husband's heart beating fast. The heart of the man who loved her. A good man, as Donatella had called him. She was right. Her husband truly was a good man. Her beloved Nico. 5 years later, Isabella looked around from the top of the hotel's grand staircase, smiling with satisfaction at the bustling crowd below in the ballroom. Are you happy with this year's collection? Nico asked. Very. All the top buyers are here, as well as the editors of the biggest and best fashion magazines. Even better, this time they all came on their own. The previous year had marked Vince's first runway show in Milan, after 3 successful years in Sydney and Tokyo. Back then, Casa Orsini had financed the event, the only way to gather the creme de la creme of the fashion world and showcase Vince's talent. As always, Nico had been right. It was necessary to invest in order to earn. After that show, Vince had been hailed in countless articles as an emerging star. But now, a year later, the new star could stand on his own feet. A triumph, then Nico declared, an expected one, given the quality and class of Vince's designs. I love seeing someone who truly believes in the product they sell. As Orsini's main backer, I couldn't be happier. Has your mother arrived with Matt yet? Isabella pointed to the row of seats reserved for special guests. The two of them were there, newlyweds, holding hands like teenagers. It had taken some time for them both to overcome their fear of marriage, but Isabella had convinced them that, after living together for nearly 5 years, they'd already passed the trial period and were ready for a real commitment. Yes, she said warmly, turning to face her husband. And they look wonderful. Who looks wonderful? Vince interrupted, stepping up to them. My mother and Matt, Isabella said proudly. Naturally, Vince murmured over his shoulder as he walked off toward a group of journalists. They're dressed by Orsini. Two of my best clients. Isabella laughed. Vince says that to everyone who shops at his Maison, she told Nico. But Mom and Matt won't be his best clients for long, now that he's Europe's newest sensation. His prices have skyrocketed, as you may have noticed. True, I've heard Donatella spends a fortune at his boutique every season. Oh, she does. To be honest, Donatella spends a fortune on plenty of things since she met Carlo. That man is only taking advantage of her. He probably is, Nico, but he makes Donatella happy. And he doesn't care about her past. That's because all he cares about is her money. Don't complain. Carlo is one of Vince's top 10 regular clients. But even so, he's nowhere near as elegant as you. My dear husband, Isabella teased, admiring Nico's tall, commanding figure. Speaking of which, it looks like you've also been spending quite a bit on clothes. My suit is simple. Just pret-a-porter, he replied seriously. But if I'm not mistaken, this red silk gown you're wearing is an original Orsini. Promoting the house is part of my job, she defended playfully. Besides, I wanted to wear my necklace. She touched her most treasured jewel, trying not to smile too obviously. If Nico only knew, but she wouldn't tell him. Not yet. I asked Vince to design something special for the occasion, Isabella murmured softly. And he outdid himself, Nico said, his gaze lingering for a moment on the elegant cut of her gown. Too bad we have to stay at the party after the show, he added, his smile making clear exactly what he was thinking. It'll be almost breakfast by the time we get to Lake Como. I don't think we need to stay that long, she whispered, but I wouldn't miss this party for the world. It was well past 1:30, and the party was still in full swing, when Isabella tapped Nico lightly on the shoulder. The car I ordered is here, she whispered in his ear. Car? What car? I thought it was my turn to drive. Just come with me, Nico, and don't argue. Your car will be perfectly safe in the hotel parking lot. She led a confused Nico across the ballroom to one of the exits, where a sleek black limousine with tinted windows waited at the curb. If I'd known you were hiring a car to take us back to the villa, I would have had a few more drinks, he grumbled. And that is exactly why I didn't tell you, Isabella replied to her puzzled husband as they slipped into the luxurious interior. I wanted you sober and alert. Nico smiled as he settled into the center of the back seat, watching Isabella slide on the opposite side. From there, she lowered the small divider window and murmured instructions in Italian to the driver. The car began to move instantly. Only then did she close the window again, cutting off the driver's view. Nico raised his brows. You planned all this? Everything, even the dress, she answered, pressing a discreet button beside her. A hidden bar opened, revealing a chilled bottle of champagne and 2 crystal flutes. Why don't you serve us, Nico? It will be a long drive to Lake Como. I told the driver to take the longest route possible. His dark eyes gleamed with sudden fire. Why did you say you planned even the dress? Because of the very tight cut, but perfectly tailored, she said with mock indifference, though her pulse was racing. She had been waiting for this moment all evening, anticipation building until it consumed her. And that means no one can tell what you're wearing underneath or what you're not wearing, which, in my case, is nothing. For once, Nico was speechless, utterly stunned. Happy anniversary, my love, she whispered seductively, pulling the cord that held her gown in place. The fabric slid down smoothly, pooling around her. But our wedding anniversary isn't for another 3 days, he reminded her. Then let's just consider this a little rehearsal, Isabella murmured, slipping across the seat toward him.